Chapter 23. The Medieval Church at its height. Outline: characteristics of the 13th century. Roman 2, territorial extent and wealth of the Church. Roman 3, organization of the papal hierarchy completed. Roman 4, the legal system of the Church. The official language and ritual of the Church. Roman 6, the sacramental system. Roman 7, the employment of art. Roman 8, the Church molded the civilization of Europe. Roman 9, sources. The 13th century was an age of lofty aspirations unfulfilled, of brilliant dreams unsubstantial as visions, of hopes ever looking to fruition and ever disappointed. The human intellect awakened, but as yet the human conscience slumbered, save in a few rare souls who mostly paid in disgrace or death the penalty of their precocious sensitiveness. The 13th century left as a legacy to the 14th century vast activity in intellectual progress, but a spiritual desert. Society was harder, coarser, and more worldly than ever. Everywhere in Western Europe, the Church seemed to have attained the extreme limits of its claims. The papal theory was triumphant. Temporal rulers were everywhere subservient to the ecclesiastics. Locally, the clergy ruled the masses in morals and religion, they controlled education and intelligence, and they practically settled all social and industrial questions. At the same time, the spirit of asceticism was never more pronounced than in the early Cistercians, Carthusians, Dominicans, Franciscans, and other orders. Mysticism stood like a stone wall to stem the tide of worldliness, of wickedness, and of disbelief. When Saint Bernard preached to the students at Paris on the vanity of study and induced 20 of them to follow him into the cloister at Clairvaux, he was attempting a very significant social revolution, which culminated in Saint Dominic and Saint Francis. Nevertheless, in the very face of the ascendancy of the Roman hierarchy, and notwithstanding the spiritual revival within the Church, there appeared a vast amount of heresy, of irreverence, and of independence. The spirit of individuality was abroad. Men became less obedient to authority and began to doubt the truth of what was taught them. This widespread distrust led to a shifting from one authority to another, rather than an entire rejection of all authority. The wealth and power of the clergy and nobility had decreased. The burghers had advanced to a position of influence and self-consciousness. Guilds, the awakened spirit of nationality, and self-governing communes were democratic factors to be taken into account. The rise of the lower classes and the consequent decline of the upper classes show that a new era is dawning over Europe. The bourgeois literature reveals a mocking contempt for nobles and bishops alike. There was a great deal of flippant wit which spared no topic and no individual. God and the devil, Aristotle and the Pope, canon and feudal law, Cistercians and priests were held up to ridicule. The subjects of popular songs are no longer exclusively the virtues of asceticism and humility, obedience to God and the feudal lord, but love of woman and the carnal joys of life have become popular themes. Villains achieve paradise by trickery. Men continually outwit Satan. A famous jongleur even shakes dice with Saint Peter and beats him at the game. Verily, a new chapter was opening in the history of Europe. Severe criticism of the iniquity and depravity of the clergy, their greed for wealth and position, and particularly their contempt for their sacred obligations, came from several sources. 1. The best men in the Church, among whom are popes, bishops, abbots, priests, and monks. Their letters and sermons reveal flagrant abuses and an earnest cry for reform. 2. The acts of church councils and synods show the general recognition among the clergy of the presence of grave irregularities and evils, and also a consciousness of their destructive tendencies. 3. The general impression of selfishness and wickedness, which the church officials made, soon was reflected in the satirical poems of the popular troubadours and by the sprightly versifiers of the courts. 4. The laity, of course, were not slow to understand conditions and became scathing critics. These lay censors in many instances went far beyond the clerical reformers. While the better clergy urged the elimination of current abuses, not one of them dreamed of denying the fundamental doctrines of the Church or the efficacy of its ceremonies. On the contrary, the lay leaders became very extreme. They declared that the Church was the creation and home of the devil, that no one ought to believe any longer that salvation came only through sacerdotal ministrations, that all theatrical ceremonies were of no avail, that the masses, relics, holy water and indulgences were mere priestly tricks for money-making purposes and not certain means of gaining paradise. These extreme opponents of the Church soon gained followers all over Christendom, from all social classes and on account of a great many reasons. From the standpoint of ecclesiastical law, however, these drastic critics who questioned the teachings of the Church and proposed to repudiate it were guilty of the grave crime of heresy. The attempt to crush the widespread heresies of the 13th century forms an awful chapter in the history of the medieval Church. The rise of the Albigenses, the Waldenses, and other heretical sects forced the Church to take drastic measures against these dangerous foes. Before the close of the 12th century, secular rulers were induced to take measures against heresy. In England, Henry Roman II, in 1166, ordered that no one should harbor heretics, and that any house in which they were received should be burned. In Spain, the King of Aragon in 1194 decreed that anyone who should listen to the Waldensians, or even give them food, should have his property confiscated and suffer death. These measures began a series of merciless decrees, which even the most enlightened rulers of the 13th century passed against heretics and their abettors. The Church was not slow to utilize this power. A determination to extirpate these dangerous heretics with the sword produced the crusade against the Albigensians. The Inquisition was also organized to ferret out secret heretics and to bring them before inquisitorial tribunals for punishment. The unfairness of the trials and the heartless treatment of suspects have rendered the name of the Inquisition infamous. From an early day, the Church exercised a censorship over all books. The first specific instance was that of a synod of bishops in Asia Minor about 150 AD, which prohibited the Acta Pauli. After that, the condemnation of books was not at all uncommon. The first papal index was issued in 494 by Pope Gelasius I, who made a definite catalogue of works prohibited. Councils condemned books as heretical, while popes prohibited their use, destroyed them, and punished those who violated the law. This policy was continued throughout the Middle Ages. Naturally, the Church was just as desirous of getting rid of heretical books as of suppressing the obnoxious authors. In territorial extent, the Roman Church of the 13th century included Italy and Sicily, Spain except the southern part, France, Germany, Hungary, Poland, England, Ireland, and Scotland, Scandinavia and Iceland, the Eastern Empire, though but temporarily, and Palestine for a short period. In size, therefore, it surpassed the old Roman Empire at its greatest height. The boundary lines of this great papal empire were widened still further by the zealous missionary work encouraged by the Supreme Pontiff in Europe among the Slavs, Prussians, Finns, and Mohammedans in Sicily and Spain, in Asia among the Tartars, Mongols, and Moslems, in Africa among the Mohammedans, in America among the inhabitants of Iceland, Greenland, and Vineland, possibly even on the New England coast. These fruitful labors were conducted chiefly by the Franciscans and the Dominicans. The wealth of the Church at this time consisted of lands and buildings, church furniture, utensils, and ornaments, and money derived from church lands, the sale of privileges, the gifts of the pious, tithes, and the fees for various kinds of religious service. In the United States, churches must rely wholly upon voluntary support. It was not so with the medieval Church. The tithes were regular taxes, and those persons upon whom they were levied had to pay them just as taxes imposed by governments must be paid today. Widespread complaint came from both clergy and laity that these taxes were unjust. The Church actually owned about 1/3 of Germany, nearly 1/5 of France, the greater part of Italy, a large section of Christian Spain, a big portion of England, perhaps 1/3, and important regions in Scandinavia, Poland, and Hungary. The Papal States in Italy, running diagonally across the peninsula, were ruled by the Pope as a temporal prince. These extensive territorial possessions, together with the great wealth, made the Church the mightiest secular power in the world and put into the hands of the Church thousands of lucrative sinecures, coveted and, too, often secured by persons wholly unfitted for the spiritual functions of the office. Through these extensive possessions, the Church was beyond all question the greatest economic and industrial power in Europe. The Church was led to adopt feudalism, and thus the Pope became the most powerful feudal overlord in Europe. Furthermore, the Church, because of its vast domains and enormous income, was enabled to support itself by its own perpetual wealth. In consequence, many evils and abuses sprang up or were introduced, which led to the decline of the Church and the numerous demands for reformation. It must be said, however, to the credit of the Church, that these resources were used to excellent advantage in furthering charity of all sorts and in caring for the poor and unfortunate. During this period, the organization of the papal hierarchy was perfected. At the head stood the all-powerful and absolute Pope as God's agent on earth. Hence, at least in theory and claim, he was the ruler of the whole world in temporal and spiritual affairs. He was the defender of Christianity, the Church, and the clergy in all respects. He was the supreme censor of morals in Christendom and the head of a great spiritual despotism. He was the source of all earthly justice and the final court of appeal in all cases. Any person, whether priest or layman, could appeal to him at any stage in the trial of a great many important cases. He was the supreme lawgiver on earth, hence he called all councils and confirmed or rejected their decrees. He might, if he so wished, set aside any law of the Church, no matter how ancient, so long as it was not directly ordained by the Bible or by nature. He could also make exceptions to purely human laws, and these exceptions were known as dispensations. He had the sole authority to transfer or depose bishops and other church officers. He was the creator of cardinals and ecclesiastical honors of all kinds. He was the exclusive possessor of the universal right of absolution, dispensation, and canonization. He was the grantor of all church benefices. He was the superintendent of the whole financial system of the Church and of all taxes. He had control over the whole force of the clergy in Christendom, because he conferred the pallium, the archbishop's badge of office. In his hands were kept the terrible thunders of the Church to enforce obedience to papal law, namely, excommunication and the interdict. Excommunication meant for a private person that he was a social outcast, excluded from all legal protection, and deprived of the sacraments which were the life-blood of the man of the Middle Ages. His property might be confiscated without the possibility of recovery. Death and hell were sure to be his doom if repentance and absolution did not occur. And these same terrible results might even be extended to his descendants. Excommunication for a king meant, in addition to the same treatment as a private individual, the deprivation of all authority and the absolution of subjects from all obedience. Excommunication was the greatest moral power in all history and effective simply because the Christian opinion of the age responded to it and enforced it. By its use the Pope subjected to his will such powerful personages as Henry Roman IV. Of Germany, Henry Roman II. Of England, Philip, Roman IV. Augustus of France, Frederick Roman II. Of Germany, John of England, and countless lesser persons all over Christendom. The power of excommunication was exercised by the Pope for the whole Church, by the bishop for his diocese, and even by subordinate church officials. The formula and ceremony for excommunication were not uniform either in time or place, but varied greatly. The interdict was directed against a city, a region, or a kingdom. It was used for the purpose of forcing a city or a ruler to obedience, as for example the interdict laid on Rome in 1155, and that on England, which lasted 6 years 3 months and 14 days, to subdue the obstinate King John, or to enforce the ban of excommunication, or to collect debts, or to wreak vengeance for the death or maltreatment of a son of the Church. The interdict was proclaimed in a papal bull and read by the clergy of the region affected to the congregations every Sunday for some weeks before it went into operation. Then all religious rites and sacraments ceased except baptism, confession, and the viaticum. All the faithful were ordered to dress like penitents and to pray for the removal of the cause of the curse. Thus the interdict resembled a raging pestilence and made a deep impression on the ignorant masses. It practically stopped all civil government, for the courts of justice were closed, wills could not be made, and public officials of all kinds were forbidden to act. Naturally, it led to many very superstitious tales. For instance, the Valley of Asp in Bayarn was cursed for 7 years, and during that time it was said that women bore no children, cattle gave no increase, and the land produced no crops or fruit. The use of such powerful weapons as excommunication and interdict was soon greatly abused. Popes and bishops employed this power out of spite, or hatred, or for ambitious ends. Scheming rulers enlisted papal or episcopal help of this sort to humble political rivals, and for purely secular ends such as enforcing laws and collecting obligations. In fact, so widespread was the employment of these powers that by the 14th century half of the Christians in Europe were under the ban. It was taught, moreover, that however illicit or apparently unfair or unwarranted, still the ecclesiastical mandates were to be obeyed. Hence popes even granted the right not to be excommunicated without good cause. Before long, these religious curses degenerated to the point where they were applied to animals and inanimate objects, of which there are many illustrations. For instance, 2 of St. Bernard's monks cursed the vineyard of a rival monk, and it became sterile until St. Bernard himself removed the blight. A certain priest, noticing that the fruit of a neighboring orchard had a stronger attraction for the children of his congregation than the divine service, excommunicated the orchard, whereupon it remained barren until the ban was taken off. At the request of the farmers, the Bishop of Comminges cursed the weeds in their fields with the desired result. St. Bernard, however, capped the climax of these absurdities when he solemnly excommunicated the devil. After the 13th century, the same weapons were used against leeches, rats, grasshoppers, snails, bugs, and pests of all kinds. In fact, as late as 1648, a similar formula was given based on the 49th Psalm and the 11th chapter of Luke. The efficacy of excommunication was likewise brought into service to protect property. For instance, the Archbishop of Compostela in the 12th century excommunicated anyone who should steal or mutilate the manuscript history of his diocese. The abbot of Sens in 1123 cursed on his deathbed any successor who should sell, lend, or lose any of the 20 volumes in the abbey library. Clement Roman III encouraged Bologna University by anathematizing any person who should offer a higher rent for rooms used by students or teachers. Later, copyrights were protected by the same power and stolen property was recovered. Letters bestowing the power of excommunication were soon purchased and used for all sorts of mercenary purposes. John Gerson of the University of Paris denounced Pope Martin V for saying that as pope he congratulated himself because he was no longer in danger of excommunication. Gradually, there came to be drawn up a list of no less than 100 sins which were ipso facto followed by excommunication. Many of these are of the most trifling character, like that of collecting toll from a priest on crossing a bridge. But this evil was offset by the ease with which one could purchase absolution. The papal court, or curia, by the 13th century included an enormous number of persons, both secular and ecclesiastic, with all kinds of duties. The financial section was in many ways the most important one. All members of the curia, which resembled the court of an emperor, were directly responsible to the pope. The cardinals were the most dignified and powerful members. Papal legates from the court swarmed over all Europe, commissioned with unlimited authority to execute papal commands and to uphold papal claims. They ranged from primates to petty priests and monks, were directly subject to the pope, and were feared and hated by the clergy and laity alike. The College of Cardinals, created in 1059, had come to play a marked role in ecclesiastical affairs in addition to their original duties. Their office ranked next to that of the pope, and they were called the Holy and Sacred College. Foreigners were first appointed as cardinals in the 13th century. A distinct dress was assumed. The red hat was given by Innocent Roman IV. 1245. The purple robe was bestowed by Boniface Roman VIII. 1297. The white horse, red cover, and golden bridle were added by Paul Roman II. 1464. And the title of eminence was created by Urban Roman VIII. 1630. These cardinals were shrewd politicians for the most part and hence divided into French, German, and Italian parties. They secured their appointments ofttimes through favoritism or nepotism, hence were not always men of the most sterling worth. As members of the papal court, they lived at Rome and were supposed to be occupied with ecclesiastical affairs in the capital or busy on important diplomatic missions. They were easily won away, however, from their lofty duties by secular princes and became involved in all sorts of questionable intrigues. It is not a matter of surprise, therefore, to find the best men of the day like Dante and Petrarch denouncing them in unmeasured terms. Below the cardinals in the hierarchy came the metropolitans, archbishops, and primates. The archbishops were the most numerous but the lowest in rank. The metropolitans ranked next and were found in the great cities. The primates had the highest rank but were comparatively few. It is doubtful whether altogether the archbishops in the 13th century numbered more than 25. The primates, who had charge in a general way of what might be called the national churches, confirmed the election of bishops and archbishops in their dioceses, called and presided over national synods, held the superior ecclesiastical courts, performed the coronation ceremonies of kings and queens, and had general control of their districts. The archbishops ruled over a distinct province including several bishops, whose election and consecration they superintended, called and presided over provincial synods, inflicted censures and punishments on the bishops for breaches of discipline, acted as court of appeal above the episcopal courts, and exercised general oversight concerning all church affairs of the districts. The metropolitans, whose historical significance was practically lost by the 13th century, had essentially the same office as that of archbishop. Under the leadership of the higher ecclesiastics, there was a tendency to form national churches. The primates and archbishops defended these national churches even against the pope and frequently sided with the kings against the supreme pontiffs. In Germany, they helped elect the emperor, played an important political role, and saved Germany from ruin again and again. In France and England, they were the trusted counselors and advisors of the sovereign. Almost without exception, they came from the nobility and were large landed proprietors as well as secular rulers. The bishops, who came next in the scale of the hierarchy, were elected originally by the people and the clergy, but that right was gradually usurped by the metropolitans and the secular rulers. The mitre and crozier were the emblems of the episcopal office. The Concordat of Worms in 1122 settled long disputes by giving both pope and ruler a share in the election. By the 13th century, however, the pope had come to have the upper hand in these ecclesiastical preferments. The total number of bishops in the 13th century was approximately 700. The duties of the bishop were both spiritual and temporal. His office was one of the most important in the medieval church. He ruled over a diocese of any number of parish churches, but had his own especial church, which was called the cathedral, and usually surpassed all other churches of the diocese in size and beauty. He saw to it that public services were conducted in the proper manner. He overlooked the administration of charity. He tried to secure efficient subordinates who would fulfill all their duties, and he alone could ordain new priests or degrade the old. He enforced discipline and canon law. He exercised the rites of confirmation and holy orders, and consecrated res sacri like churches and shrines. He usually supervised the monastic houses in his diocese, and he himself conducted religious services of a special character in his cathedral or domus Dei. He assumed judicial power over his clergy, and in case of misbehavior punished them by deposition or confinement in a cloister. He passed judgment on all questions of marriage, wills, oaths, usury, and similar subjects. In general, each bishop, under the authority of the representative of St. Peter, was a little pope over that section of the church which was under his jurisdiction, and he was regarded as the direct successor of the apostles. On the temporal side, the bishop was a landlord, governed a large estate, and performed those governmental duties which the king, particularly in Germany, thrust upon him. He did not own the land, but only used it. He himself was often a vassal, had a large number of vassals and sub-vassals under him, collected feudal dues from his inferiors, paid feudal tributes to his superiors, and was an integral part of the feudal system. His installation to office was invariably accompanied by the ceremony of feudal investiture. Indeed, from many standpoints, he was more of a feudal lord than a churchman. It is easy to see, therefore, what a powerful factor the bishop was in both secular and ecclesiastical affairs, and how sweeping was his influence. There were several deviations from the regular office of bishop. The chore bishop or country bishop, who was little more than an assistant of the city bishop, had gradually died out by the 13th century. The honorary bishop or titular bishop, a title first applied to missionary bishops, still existed in Europe but with no regular diocese. The progress of Mohammedanism drove many regular bishops away from their episcopal seats in Asia, Africa, and Spain. But they were allowed to retain their titles and functions even though deprived of their dioceses, and successors were regularly elected. Again, during the Crusades, many bishoprics were established in the East. Through the failure of the Crusades, however, these bishops lost their dioceses, but they too were permitted to retain their titles in the hope of eventually recovering their possessions. They likewise served as assistants to bishops in Western Europe, and their successors were regularly appointed by the Pope. They became very independent and often caused the regular bishops much trouble. Efforts were made later to get rid of them, but without success. Connected with each bishop's cathedral was a chapter which probably grew out of the original college of presbyters, who assisted the bishop in his spiritual and secular duties. As time passed, and the church grew, these presbyters came to be attached to the cathedral as a distinct body of the clergy. By the 9th century, these clergy came to be known as a chapter and consisted of either the seculars, i.e., the clergy not bound by monastic vows and living in separate houses, or the regulars, i.e., the clergy living as monks in a common building. Thus, the chapter came to have a regular organization with officers whose duties were more or less clearly defined. At the head stood the bishop, then the dean, the real acting head, and after him the precentor or chanter, who was a musical director. The chancellor, who had charge of the education of younger members, the library, correspondence, and the delivery of lectures and sermons. The treasurer, who was responsible for the funds of the church, the sacred vessels, the altar furniture, and the reliquaries. The subdean, the subchanter, and vice-chancellor. And the archdeacons, whose number depended on the size of the diocese, who executed episcopal orders, who acted as inspectors and had minor judicial functions, and who became so independent and powerful that the office was abolished in the 12th century. The remaining members of the chapter were called canons or prebendaries. During the absence of the canons, their duties were performed by substitutes called vicars. Each chapter had its own laws, endowments, fees, revenues, and jurisdiction over lands. The chapters often came into open conflict with the bishops and tended to form alliances with popes and rulers against the episcopal authorities. It was not uncommon, either, to find chapters practically independent of the bishops with members appointed directly by the pope. These bodies exercised great powers they called councils, they tried clerical cases, they even excommunicated, and as little colleges of cardinals, usually at the king's suggestion, elected bishops. Membership in a chapter was regarded as a fat berth and hence eagerly sought by leading families of nobility. At the bottom of the hierarchical scale stood the priests who presided over the parishes, which were divided into city, village, and rural parishes, and were the lowest divisions of the church. As a rule, a parish contained at least 10 families and varied from that to a considerable village or a large section of a town. The appointment of the priests was made by the patron of the parochial church, i.e., the person who owned the church property, whether a layman or a clerical person. The appointee was confirmed by the bishop. Churches were thus frequently handed about from one owner to another like any feudal property, and consequently the tendency was to secularize the priests as well as the higher clergy. Seeing this evil, the monastic orders sought to reform the abuse by bringing priests under their control. The income of the priest was derived from lands belonging to the parish church, from tithes, and from contributions, but as a rule it was scarcely more than enough to meet his scanty needs. The priest was the only church officer who came continually into direct touch with the masses of the people, and consequently, he it was who really controlled the destiny of both their bodies and souls. In addition to conducting the regular services, he could administer or withhold the sacraments so necessary to salvation, and hence the destiny of all men rested in his hands. He absolved, baptized, married, and buried his parishioners. He monopolized the auricular confession, and through it regulated the conscience, determined conduct, and cured the soul of sin. If advice and penance failed to keep the incorrigible sinner in the path of righteousness, his case could be carried to the spiritual court of the bishop, who had practically unlimited power. Each priest had not only certain duties to perform, but also possessed distinct rights and privileges, and a supernatural character which put him and his property above the common level of humanity. No longer a citizen of a state, the church was his country, his home, and his family. No matter what crime he committed, the secular power could not arrest him. Only a religious tribunal could try him, and such bodies never shed human blood. Hence, punishments for misdemeanors were comparatively light. The parish church was the unit of medieval civilization, and the priest was looked up to as the natural guardian of the community. He cared for both the souls and bodies of his flock. In addition to using every agency to induce his members to lead godly lives, it was his business to see that no dangerous characters lurked in the village's heretics, sorcerers, or lepers. The clergy were separated from the laity by a very pronounced differentiation. The sacred character imparted to the priesthood by the sacrament of ordination, the holy calling of the man of God who held in his hands the power of spiritual life and death, and the enforcement of the canon of celibacy after a bitter struggle of more than a century, all tended to emphasize and magnify the wide gulf between the clergy and the layman. The sacerdotal office was most highly respected as the certain avenue to social service, to fame, and to honor. It is no surprise, therefore, to see men of all ranks entering the ministry of the Church. For those of humble birth, the opportunity thus offered was about the only means of promotion in Europe. Once in the Church, talent and energy could always overcome lowly origin and attain elevation to a high place. The annals of the hierarchy are full of the examples of those who rose from the meanest social ranks to the most commanding positions. Many of the greatest and best popes had that experience. Thus the Church constantly recruited its ranks with vigorous, fresh blood. Not even the lot of the prince was envied by the priest. Princes, asserted John of Salisbury, derive their power from the Church and are servants of the priesthood. Honorius of Autun wrote, "The least of the priestly order is worthier than any king." A great thing it truly was for the future of Europe that in those rough ages there existed a moral force superior to noble descent, to blue blood, and to martial prowess to point out the correct path, to uphold right, and to sanction eternal justice. The Corpus Juris Canonis, or canon law, which regulated all the workings of the hierarchy, included all the rules enacted by the Church for its relation with the secular power, for its own internal administration, and for the duties and conduct of its members. It differed from the jus ecclesiasticum, or ecclesiastical law, in having the Church for its source, while the latter had the Church for its subject. The pseudo-Isidorian decretals continued to be the constitution of the Church. Various commentaries, all based upon the decretals as the chief repertory, were made by prominent churchmen. Gratian, a Camaldulensian monk, a professor in Bologna University, in 1251 taught canon law as a distinct and complete system like Roman law. He published the Decretum Gratiani, a scientific digest of all canon laws, which soon superseded all other codifications and became the basis for many later commentaries. Canon law was studied in all the medieval universities. Regular faculties of canon law were established, which granted the degree of Doctors Decretorum after a course of 6 years' study. It was not long, therefore, until the Church was given a class of keen, well-drilled lawyers who gradually extended ecclesiastical jurisdiction over all religious duties, over baptisms, marriages, and deaths, and hence over legitimacy and succession, over all persons under religious vows, and consequently over the clergy, crusaders, widows, orphans, and minors, over heresy, blasphemy, and sacrilege, and over adultery, bigamy, fraud, and perjury. The canon law of the Church must also be given credit for laying the foundation for international law and serving as a model for constitutional law. The papal penitentiary, or court, grounded on the power of the keys, possessed original and appellate powers of first instance and last resort. It originated in 1215 at Rome and consisted of a body of canonists and theologians who acted as a unit under powers granted by the Pope. It attempted to decide all cases of morals and discipline, oftentimes in virtual ignorance of the facts. During the 13th century, penitentiaries were appointed in every bishopric to take cognizance of cases. Thus, the eagle eyes of the Supreme Court of Rome were fastened on every breach of law throughout Christendom. Naturally, many abuses were connected with such a system. In 1022, the Council of Seligenstadt complained that Rome had extended her jurisdiction even over the laity. Through local representatives, the papal penitentiary practically nullified the discipline of bishops and granted virtual immunity to offenders. Venality was an accompanying evil from the beginning. Absolution could easily be secured by the rich and influential, and dispensations were sold for money. Of course, this condition produced disastrous effects on morals. Rome was a fountain of pardon for all infractions of the Decalogue. Bishop Grosseteste declared about 1250 that the low morality of the priesthood was due to this system. pardon was granted to both sides of the controversy. A priest stole a book from his own church, pawned it for money, and then excommunicated the unknown thief. He was discovered but pardoned on the ground that he could not interdict himself. Monks and nuns bought their way into convents and then purchased absolution for the act. By the 13th century, the Roman ritual in the Latin language was practically in universal use. The slavish liturgy had disappeared, and in Spain alone the old national liturgy still lingered, though even there the Roman ritual was permitted. Latin had become the general official language of the Church. But it was not uncommon to give in the vernacular, besides the regular announcements, the confession of faith, the confession of sin with the general absolution, intercessions for the living and the dead, and the Lord's Prayer. At this period of the Church's greatest power, there was a noticeable revival of preaching caused by the monastic reformers like the Clugniacs, Cistercians, Dominicans, and Franciscans who earnestly preached repentance, and also by the tremendous crusading enthusiasm. All the heroes of monasticism, scholasticism, and the papal hierarchy were forceful preachers. To accommodate these preachers, pulpits were built against a pillar or in a corner of a nave. To the masses on popular occasions, and even in the regular services, they spoke in the vernacular, but all stately addresses in synods and councils were delivered in the speech of Rome. Popes and councils urged the importance of rearing a race of learned clergy who could give the Church intelligent leadership. The Synod of Treves in 1221 went so far as to forbid uneducated and inexperienced priests to preach, because it caused more harm than good. As a result of this widespread preaching, the Church was given a unity of doctrine and feeling which it had not enjoyed before. The number of sacraments was generally recognized by the 13th century as 7. Peter Lombard's sentences first outlined them, and Thomas Aquinas, d. 1274, practically established them, although they were not officially adopted until the Council of Florence in 1439. Theoretically, the sacraments were believed to confer grace, the fullness of divine life, upon the recipients and to make them different persons with new characters. This change was produced by God through the Church and was based upon the idea that this life should be consecrated and sanctified by religion in all its various relations. Hence, baptism suggested birth to a new spiritual life free from the sin due to Adam's fall. The Lord's Supper gave nutriment to preserve life and strength. Penance indicated a recovery to health after sickness incident to sin. Confirmation marked the growth of righteous life to maturity. Extreme unction suggested diet and exercise in convalescence and purified and refreshed the spirit of the dying. Ordination marked a promotion to a higher consecrated life and to new duties. And marriage meant the assumption of new social relations which could never be severed. The Church held that all these sacraments were instituted by Jesus and used by him personally, although baptism and the Lord's Supper were the most important. Peter Lombard said that if Christ did not employ them, the apostles at least did. Baptism, confirmation, and ordination, it was held, imparted an indelible character, therefore could not be repeated. All consecrations and blessings were looked upon as different from the sacraments and were called sacramentalia. It was asserted also that the administration of the sacraments in the hands of a bad priest was valid. The Mass continued to be the heart, lifeblood, and very center of all worship. It was believed to be a propitiatory sacrifice offered to God for the sins of the world whenever the sacrament was celebrated. Christ was recrucified as on the cross at each Mass. The Eucharist gave spiritual nourishment to the communicant, averted evils and brought blessings, and with penance, removed the guilt of sin. Transubstantiation became a fixed dogma in the 13th century. Up to the 9th century, the Church unanimously believed that the real body and blood of Christ were administered to those who received the sacrament of the Eucharist. But Christians differed widely as to the nature and manner of their presence, and no pope or council had settled the question. In 830, one Radbert wrote a famous book on the subject, in which he held that after consecration, only the figure of bread and wine was present, and that the rest was literal body and blood, and that this body and blood was the same as that born of Mary, crucified, and raised from the dead. This work created a warm discussion which lasted for 4 centuries and provoked many bitter individual quarrels. Innocent Roman III, in 1215, settled the dispute by making the dogma of transubstantiation a part of the constitutional law of the Church, and at the same time ordered all the laity to go to confession and to partake of the Eucharist at least once a year. The dogma did not pass unquestioned, although the common people had no difficulty in believing it. As a result, it led to the deification of the bread and wine, to the use of beautiful golden or silver urns and cups for them, to the construction of a costly tabernacle in which to keep the sacred elements, to lamps and decorations, to solemn processions, to a pompous ceremony, to bowing the knee before the host in the church and on the streets, and to prayer to the host as the most important part of worship, and to the celebration throughout the whole church of an annual festival of the Holy Sacrament, 1264. The cup was withheld from the laity and given only to the priests after the 11th century, because it was feared that the wine might be spilled, and also because it was believed that the body and blood of Jesus were fully present in both elements. Wafers, called the host, were substituted for the broken bread. The Mass soon became an object of commerce. Private masses for the living and particularly for the dead, begun in the 8th century, were very common in the 13th, so much so, in fact, that certain priests had no other function than that of saying masses for the dead. All over Christendom endowments were given for these masses, and an army of priests did nothing else. By refusing Mass, the clergy could exert strong pressure on individuals and governments. The Mass was held to be absolutely necessary to salvation, and the Eucharist was even given to little children, although in the 13th century it was restricted to children under 7. It also had a marked effect upon church architecture by increasing the number of altars in the church in order to accommodate the increasing number of private masses. All the physical and metaphysical education of the age turned upon the question of the Mass. Penance played a very important part in the Church in the 13th century and received its final form in the Council of Florence in 1439. As early as the 5th century, a regular criminal code developed in the Church, and in the 7th century, a Grecian monk who was archbishop enacted a body of severe laws for penitential discipline, which remained in authority until the 12th century. The climax was reached in the 13th century, when every diocese had its own penitential code and public penance had been replaced by private penance. Penance was simply the punishment prescribed by the priest to remove the guilt of sin, and usually consisted of fasts, prayers, pilgrimages, and acts of charity and mercy. The Church early permitted penance to be paid by substituting money payments for some pious enterprise. Furthermore, it was generally held that penance afflicted on one person could be paid by another. For example, a penance of 7 years could be accomplished in 7 days by a sufficient number of coworkers. Even Thomas Aquinas said that as long as the debt was paid, it mattered little who paid it. Indulgences and papal pardons paralleled the history of penance. The power to show leniency, or to short or to lengthen the character or the time of penance, was early recognized to be in the bishop's hands. From this idea, there gradually arose a regular system of commutation, which reached the highest point during the Crusade movement. The theory was most fully stated by Thomas Aquinas and Alexander of Hales. They asserted that after the remission of the eternal punishment due for sin, there still remained a temporal punishment to be undergone either in this life or in purgatory. That temporal pain might be remitted by the application of the superabundant merits of Christ and the saints out of the treasury of the Church. The hierarchy was the custodian of that prerogative. But indulgence could be granted only to those who were in full communion with the Church and who manifested a contrite heart, made confession, and submitted to penance. Penances were either general or local, or plenary or partial. The use of indulgences was very much abused since they were often granted only for money and because they were employed for trivial and secular purposes like building bridges and improving roads. They were even applied to the dead. The doctrine of purgatory had developed by the 12th century and was generally accepted in the 13th. Auricular confession, which seems to have been fully developed by the time of Innocent I, was required by Innocent Roman III. After 1216 of all church members at least once a year under penalty of exclusion from the Church. It was an essential part of the sacrament of penance and gave the priests a tremendous power over the people, which was used both for good and ill. The Synod of Toulouse in 1229 insisted on compulsory confession at Christmas, Easter, and Pentecost. Any breach of the confessional was visited by the Fourth Lateran Council with excommunication, deposition, and imprisonment for life in a monastery. Confession was the bridle by means of which the laity were guided by the priesthood. Hence the Church laid more and more importance upon the necessity of the practice as a duty. Absolution grew up as a necessary part of auricular confession. Before the 13th century, the priest acted ministerially and used the form domus absolvet te misericorde tui omnipotens Deus et dimitat tibi omnia peccata tua. These words are still found in the Greek Church and are also allowable in the Roman Catholic service. After the 13th century, however, the priest acted judicially and said, Ego absolvo te. The priest's forgiveness was God's forgiveness. The requisites for absolution were contrition of heart, promise of amendment of life, and reparation. Extreme unction as a sacrament came into use rather late. Peter Lombard gave it 5th place among the 7 sacraments. Original sin was atoned for in baptism, actual sins by penance, and extreme unction wiped away all remaining sins which would hinder the soul from entering its perfect rest. Hence, it was given only to those who were mortally ill. In case of recovery, however, it could be repeated. The eyes, ears, nose, mouth, hands, loins, and feet, except of women, were anointed with holy oil consecrated by the bishop on Maundy Thursday. Confession and communion preceded the rite. These 3 together constituted the viaticum of the soul on its long journey. From the time when private meeting places gave way to places of public worship, throughout its whole career, the Church has employed art for purposes of utility and instruction. The transitional character of the 13th century, along social, ecclesiastical, intellectual, and political lines, was also strongly marked in art. In the conflict between feudalism and royalty, monarchy gradually gained ground. The problem of human right appeared along with the problem of human might. Out of the composite struggle of kings, feudal barons, popes, bishops, abbots, and free cities emerged the recognized supremacy of papal authority as the one power above and behind all others. The episcopacy stood for the rights of the pope, on the one hand, and the rights of the people on the other. Next to the papal supremacy stood the kingly prerogative. Under the double patronage of the Church and the state, ecclesiastical art advanced with rapid strides. Gothic architecture reached its highest development during the 13th century. Europe was covered with magnificent churches, cathedrals, and monasteries. Architecture was the dominant art of the Middle Ages. The church building occupied a unique place in the community. Everybody was a member of the church and attended the one sacred edifice in the parish. The erection and beautifying of a new church was a matter of interest to all. Local pride was deeply touched. A strong rivalry soon developed, which led each village and city to outdo their neighbors by erecting larger, more expensive, and more beautiful chapels and cathedrals. The church of that day was the center not alone of religious activity, but also of local politics, of community business, of social gatherings, of education, and of the fine arts. It was the very heart of all life, and hence members lavished their affection, their time, and their wealth on it. Nothing in our community life today can be well compared with the church of that day. It was the town hall, art museum, club, public library, school, and church all in one. With us, the religious interest of every community is divided among various denominations, while the differentiation of our other institutions has destroyed the earlier unity of interest. The Gothic churches with pointed arches and flying buttresses lightened the masonry of the hitherto massive walls, pierced them with great, beautiful stained glass windows, and allowed the sunlight to stream into the dark interiors. Then mosaics, sculpture, fresco, and painting were used to enrich and decorate the inner parts. Moldings and capitals, pulpits, altars, side chapels, choir screens, the wooden seats for the clergy and choristers, the reading desk, and the tombs were literally covered with carvings of leaf and flower forms, of familiar animals and grotesque monsters, of biblical scenes and ordinary incidents. The exteriors of these wonderful structures, which were marvels of lightness and delicacy of detail, were usually ornamented with an army of statues representing apostles, saints, donors, and rulers. Is it a matter of surprise that the bishops and clergy, who ruled over these Christian temples erected in love, in prayer, and in self-sacrifice, should be honored and obeyed? These wonderful houses of religion were the glad free will offerings of a devout and believing people to the mighty Roman Catholic Church, of which they were the proud, privileged members. A splendid picture of the beautiful devotion of the people of a region in the erection of a magnificent cathedral is found in Chartres, France. That wonderful edifice was begun in 1194 and completed in 1240. To construct a building that would beautify their city and satisfy their religious aspirations, the citizens contributed of their strength and property year after year for nearly half a century. Far from home, they went to the distant quarries to dig out the rock. Encouraged by their priests, they might be seen, men, women, and children, yoked to clumsy carts loaded with building materials. Day after day, their weary journey to and from the quarries continued. When at night they stopped, worn out with the day's toil, their spare time was given up to confession and prayer. Others labored with more skill, but with equal devotion on the great cathedral itself. As the grand edifice grew year by year from foundation stone to towers, the inhabitants watched it with pious jealousy. At length it was completed, not, however, until many who had labored at the beginning had passed away. Its dedication and consecration marked an epoch in that part of France. Most historians are prone to dwell upon the evils of the Church in this period, as if they far outweighed the good. Many bishops were worldly and wicked, therefore the conclusion is drawn that all bishops were of that character, whereas out of the 700 bishops in Europe, a very large proportion were comparatively faithful shepherds who were striving with all their might to realize the high ideals for which the Church stood. Many of the clergy were guilty of gross immorality, hence comes the sweeping assertion that all the clergy were unfit for their high and noble calling, while, as a matter of fact, thousands of the priests obeyed the laws of the Church, led model God-fearing lives, and continually pointed out to their people the high and certain path to salvation. Abuses, corruptions, extortions did exist in every quarter of Christendom. Bad clergymen did use their high prerogatives for base purposes. Many bishops, abbots, and priests were no more worthy to be given extensive powers in trust than the unscrupulous politicians who often secure high places in our municipal, state, and national governments. The sinecures and benefices of the Church offered the same temptations to money-making and to questionable methods that our civil offices do today to the dishonest and unscrupulous office holders. But all of the officials in the Church in the 13th century were no more guilty of these evils than are all public men in the United States today addicted to the practices of the base political tricksters. It seems to be a universal fact that one bad man in the Church attracts more attention and creates more comment than a multitude of good men. The fundamental causes of the numerous evil practices in the Church are found in the wealth and power of the Roman ecclesiastical organization on the one hand, and the comparatively low moral standards of civilization on the other. Throughout its whole remarkable career of 1,300 years, the Catholic Church had denounced the bad and taught the good. Unfortunately, in attempting to realize the kingdom of God on earth through that organization which was assumed to be of divine origin, life and practice did not always harmonize with the doctrines inculcated. The ideal and the real are seldom brought to coincide in any human institutions, and it would be expecting a realization of the well-nigh impossible to hope to see the consummation of that desirable condition in the medieval Church, when all the contradictory factors and forces are taken into account. But it can be safely asserted, when all debits and credits of baneful and beneficial are given just consideration, that the mighty Church at its height was the most powerful force in Europe for justice, for mercy, for charity, for peace among men, for honesty, for temperance, for human rights, for social service, for culture, for domestic purity, for obedience to law and order, and for a noble, helpful Christian life both for individuals and states. The sublime foundations on which the Church rested, the marvelous history it could point to, its peerless organization, its vast wealth, its strong grip on the faith of the people, its close alliance with the state, all combined to make its officers, the clergy, the most influential social class in Europe. In their hands were the keys of heaven, and without their permission no one could hope to enter. Since they were about the only educated class, they wrote the books and directed all advance along intellectual, literary, and artistic lines. In short, they molded the progress of that day. They wrote public documents and proclamations for rulers, sat in royal councils, and acted as governmental ministers. They dominated every human interest, regulated more or less every phase of life in the Middle Ages, and conferred inestimable benefit upon Europe of that day and this. The Church in this age was the dominant factor in European civilization. It fashioned laws and dictated the policy of governments. It controlled education and intelligence. It influenced occupations and industries. It molded social ideas and customs. And it set the standards of morality and determined the life and conduct of both this world and that to come. The Church was divided into two sharply defined classes, the laity and the priesthood. The great division of mankind, which had become complete and absolute into the clergy, and the rest of mankind still subsisted in all of its rigorous force. They were two castes, separate and standing apart as by the irrepealable law of God. They were distinct, adverse, even antagonistic in their theory of life, in their laws, in their corporate property, in their rights, in their immunities. In the aim and object of their existence, in their social duties and position, they were set asunder by a broad, deep, impassable line. The priesthood, with an indelible character, married to the Church, stood between God and man and tended to become the Church. The Church was essentially an organized state, thoroughly centralized, with one supreme head and a complete gradation of officials, with a comprehensive system of law courts for trying cases, with penalties covering all crimes, and with prisons for punishing offenders. It demanded an allegiance from all its members somewhat like that existing today between subjects and a state. It developed one official language, the Latin, which was used to conduct its business everywhere. Thus all Western Europe was one great religious association from which it was treason to revolt. Canon law punished such a crime with death, public opinion sanctioned it, and the secular arm executed the sentence. The Church militant was thus an army encamped on the soil of Christendom, with its outposts everywhere, subject to the most efficient discipline, animated with a common purpose, every soldier panoplied with inviolability and armed with the tremendous weapons which slew the soul. There was little that could not be dared or done by the commander of such a force, whose orders were listened to as oracles of God, from Portugal to Palestine and from Sicily to Iceland. History records no such triumph of intellect over brute force as that which, in an age of turmoil and battle, was wrested from the fierce warriors of the time by priests who had no material force at their command, and whose power was based alone on the souls and consciences of men. Over soul and conscience, their empire was complete. No Christian could hope for salvation who was not in all things an obedient son of the Church, and who was not ready to take up arms in its defense. And, in a time when faith was a determining factor of conduct, this belief created a spiritual despotism which placed all things within reach of him who could wield it. In the 13th century, the medieval church was a completed institution and at the height of its power. Its rise from humble beginnings, by a multitude of explainable causes and forces, to this lofty position is a well-nigh incredible miracle. It was very different from all modern churches, whether Catholic or Protestant, yet was the mother of all of them. Both theoretically and legally, all persons in Western Europe belonged to it and were ruled by it, except those who were expelled from it, and thus formed one mighty religious society, the like of which has not again appeared in Christendom. Unable during subsequent centuries to meet the demands of new and higher phases of civilization, the medieval church broke up into the various Christian sects of today. Sources: A. Primary, Eels' Life and Works of St. Bernard. Henderson, Historical Documents of the Middle Ages, ch. A Formulary of the Papal Penitentiary in the 13th Century. Mean, Patrologia Latina. Morley, Medieval Tales. Robinson, Readings in European History. Steele, R. Medieval Lore. Lond, 1893. Thatcher and McNeill, A Sourcebook for Medieval History. Univ, of Penn, Translations and Reprints. B. Secondary. I. Special, Bethune Baker, J.F., The Influence of Christianity on War. Cam, 1888, Brace, G.L., Justa Christi. Lond, 1886. Cornish Chivalry, Cuts, E.L., Scenes and Characters of the Middle Ages. Lond, 1872. Parish Priests and Their People. Lond, Dollinger, J.J.I. Papal Fables of the Middle Ages. Fournier, Les Officialités au Moyen Age. Gaudier Chivalry. Jessop, The Coming of the Friars. Lee, H.C., History of Auricular Confession. 3 vols, Phil, 1896. History of the Inquisition. 3 vols, History of Sacerdotal Celibacy. Superstition and Force. Studies in Church History. Lucer, Manuel des Institutions. Maitland, The Dark Ages, Milman H.H. History of Latin Christianity. Roman 8, BK, ch. 1-10. Prevost, L'Église et les campagnes au Moyen Age. Rashdall, History of the Universities of Europe in the Middle Ages. Smith, The Troubadours at Home. Roman 2, General. Adams Med, Civ, ch. 1618, Blunt ich 1012, Cox Lect. 57 Darras Roman 3, ch. 810, Dehorb ch. 1142 Fisher PD, 6 ch. 6, Fawkes ch. 1112, Giesler Roman 3, ch. 2, 5 and 6, Gilmartin Roman 2, ch. 513, Hardwick ch. 8, 10, 12, Hayes sec. 192-37, Hurst ich. 50. Jennings Roman 2, ch. 1213, Knight ch. 1416, Kurtz Roman 2, 89-138, Milner Roman 3, cent. 1213, Moeller Roman 2, pd. 2 ch. 5 Roman 3, ch. 2 and 3 Neander Roman 4, Robertson bk. 5 ch. 13 bk. 6 ch. 6-8 Sykes ch. 17. Index. Abbots 217, 218, 421 of Clugny, 429. Abelard 511, 518, 559. Absolution 590, 597. Abstinence 204. Abubeker 479. Abuses, clerical 421, 426, 430, 432, 548, 563. Abu Talib 479. Acolytes 63. Acre fall of 499. Actium battle of 41. Adalbert 398, 425. Adaldeg 251. Adalger 251. Adelaide 392, 402. Adelbert 243. Adelbert of Bremen 438. Adelbert of Prague 249, 257. Adelbert 165. Edhemer Bishop of Puy 494. Arius of Sebasta 220. African Church 155. Agents at Eastern Court 299. Agilbert 239. Agilulf King 243. Agnes Empress 451. Agabard of Lyon 283, 364. Agriculture 198. Aidan 164. Alaric Roman 2, 296. Albertus Magnus 525. Albigenses 501, 506, 560, 562, 572. Alcuin 249, 311, 318. Aldich 335. Alemany 234, 243. Eleontora, order of 514. Alexander Roman 2. 360, 364, 369, 442, 446, 451. Alexander Roman 3. 362, 364, 379, 413, 545. Alexander Roman 4, 536. Alexander of Alexandria, 137, 138, 141, 349. Alexander of Hales, 597. Alexander the Great, 199, 318. Alexander Severus, 103, 268, 291. Alexius, Emperor, 493, 495. Ali, 479. Alliance of Church and State, 202, 204. Alliance of Pope and Franks, 302, 304, 305, 307. Alms, 352. Amania, 165. Ambrose, 170, 211, 213, 295, 368, 380. Ammon, 205, 208. Anacletus, 331. Anagni, 545. Anastasius, 174, 365. Andrew, Saint, 257. Angels, 354. Angles, 235. Anglo-Saxon invasion, 240. Anicetus, 155. Anne, 257. Ansgar, 250, 253, 341. Anthony of Alexandria, 205, 211. Anthony, order of, 514. Anthony, saint, 203, 208, 427. Antioch captured, 495. Antioch council of, 178, 348. Antipetrine view, 77. Antoninus Pius, 102. Appiarius, 167. Apostles, 56 and monasticism, 201, and the state, 290. Apostles' Creed, 356, 371. Apostolic Christianity, 202. Apostolic Church, 154, 160 ff. 202, 375. Apostolic Constitutions, 163. Canons, 178, 330, 331. Apostolic Seat, 61. Apostolic Succession, 61. Appeals to Rome, 155, 169, 175, 348, 562, 575. Aquileia Council of, 171. Aquinas Thomas, 373, 525, 592, 595, 596. Arabia in 570, 476 ff. Under Mohammed, 480. Arabs, 476 ff. Archbishops, 61. In Europe, 315, 336 origin of, 348 350, power, 350, in 13th century, 581, 582. Archdeacons, 62. Architecture, 598, 599, 600. Arian controversy, 120, 136 ff. 175, 266, 294. Arian princes conquered, 302. Arianism, 143, 145, 189, 232, 233. Arians, 139, 141, 142, 144, 145, 166. Aristotle, 47. Arius, 137, 138, 141, 144. Arles, Council of, 119, 144, 162, 163, 175, 244, 293, 353. Arles, Council of, in 813, 313. Arnold, 16. Arnold of Brescia, 511, 518, 559. Arnoldites, 519. Arnulf, 387. Art, 42, 270. Asceticism, use of, 64, 199. Attacks on, 218, 219. Ascetics, 203. None in early church, 204, 427. Athalaric, 296. Athanasius, 9, 139, 141, 142, 144, 166, 181, 206, 209, 211, 212, 349. Athens, 48. Attila, 184. Augustine, Saint, 9, 168, 170, 211, 213, 372. Augustine, City of God, 318. Augustine, Abbot, 165, 235, 236, 237, 238. Augustine, Rule of, 511. Augustinians, 536, 539. Augustus, 48, 94. Aurelian, 105, 156. Aurelius, 330. Avars, 308, 309. Aves, order of, 514. Eimer, Abbot of Clugny, 429. Babio, 243. Baldwin of Bouillon, 494. Baldwin Roman II, 513. Banns, 564. Baptism, 181, 219, 352, 372, 374, 375. Baptisteries, 375. Barbarian invasions, 169, 180, 183, 293, 357, 385. Later, 388. Barbarians, conversion of 230, 231. Baronius, 16. Basil, Saint, 139, 167, 210. Basil, rule of 212. Basil, emperor, 257. Basques, 308. Boer, 17. Bavarians, 302, 308. Bede, 16, 73, 235, 240. Begging orders, 216, 518 ff. 536, 537. Beghards, 519, 520, 538. Beguines, 519, 520. Belisarius deposes a pope, 297. Bells, 372. Benedict, 187, 213. Benedict Roman 7, 402. Benedict Roman 8, 368, 407, 408, 420, 426. Benedict Roman 9, 410, 420. Benedict X, 438, 439. Benedictine Rule, 190, 214-16, 428, 431, 432. Benedictines, 199, 248, 434. Benedictus Levita, 335. Berenger, 387. Berenger Roman 2, 392, 395. Bernard, Saint, 368, 369, 402, 491, 496, 511, 513, 516, 518, 570. Bernard of Quintaval, 528. Bertha, 236. Bible manuscripts, 269. Bishop of Rome, 76, 77, 107, 149, 151, 153, 154, 155, 158, accepted as Peter's successor. 160, 170 claims appellate power. 165. Greatest man in Western Europe. 168 settles disputes. 169. Primacy of 172, 175. Power approved by emperor. 178 calls councils. 294 becomes a temporal prince. 302. Bishoprics created in Germany. 247, 249, 253. Bishoprics founded in France. 303. Bishops, 57 equality of 176 increase their power. 322 subjected to state. 337 election of 351 duties. 351 ff. 421 in the East. 501 in 13th century. 582 ff. Bishops, provincial, 158. Bjorn, king, 253. Blackfriars, see Dominicans. Blondel, David, 333. Bogoris, duke, 256. Bohemia, 449. Bohemian Church, 255. Bohemians, 255, 391, 401. Bohemond, 494, 495. Boleslav the Cruel, 255. Boleslaw Roman II, 369. Bologna University, 545, 579, 589. Bonasus, 220. Bonaventura, 537, 538. Boniface, 165, 305, 309. Boniface, Saint, 244 ff. 330, 333. Boniface I, 295. Boniface Roman 4, 378, 380. Boniface Roman 7, 402. Boniface Roman 8, 413, 525, 581. Borzoué, Duke, 255. Bossut, 16. Brescia, Council of 467. Bretons, 308. Breviarium, 330. Bridge Brothers, 515. Bridget, Saint, 240. British Christians, 238. Brotherhoods of the Peace of God, 359. Brothers and Sisters of Penitence, 530. Brothers of the Sword, 514. Bruno, 249, 399, 424, 434 ff. 511. Bruno, Abbot of Clugny, 428. Bruno of Cologne, 510. Buddha, 199. Bulgarians, 253, 256, 407. Burghers, increase in importance, 570. Burgundian Code, 363. Burgundians, 145, 233, 302. Burgundy united with Germany, 406. Byzantine Empire, 126, 405. Byzantine historians, 16. 100. Caecilius, 95. Caesar Augustus, 48, 94, 318. Caesar Julius, 48. Caesar Tiberius, 48. Caesarins, 538. Caius, 80, 86. Calatrava, Order of 514. Calendar of Saints, 378. Callistus, 358. Calixtus I, 177, 453. Calixtus Roman II, 472. Callistus, 160, 163. Calvin, 333. Camaldulates, 429 ff, 445. Candles, 220. Canon Law, 143, 246, 370, 549. Canonization, 379. Canons of the Church, 142, 144, 145, 266, 329. Canossa, 463 ff. Canute, 407, 409. Capitula Angleramni, 331. Capuchins, 539. Caracalla, 103. Carloman, 216, 304, 307. Carmelites, 520, 539. Carnals, 338. Caroline Books, 283. Carolingian Empire, 321, 386, 387, 391. Carolingian Policy of Division of Rule, 320, 348. Carthage Church of 449. Carthage Council of 171. Carthusians 510, 570. Cassion 211, 213, 521. Cassiodorus 330. Catacombs 268. Catechists 63. Catechumens 374, 375. Cassare 511. Catharists 560. Catholic Church 5, 75, 107, 148, Unity of 156, 157. Said Bishop 239. Celestine 168, 174. Celestine Roman 3, 362, 364, 551. Celestine V 512, 538. Celestines 512, 538. Celibacy 64, 143, 161, 181, 190, 203, 220, 247, 266, 300, 355, 356, 436, 439, 442, 450, 452, 453 ff. 544, 564. Celsus 95. Celtic Missionaries 164, 246. Celts 235, 237, 241, 244. Chalcedon Council of 172, 174, 184, 194, 218, 294, 297, 349. Chapter 584 ff. Charity 159, 198, 364, 365. Charlemagne, see Charles the Great. Charles the Bald, 319, 342, 385. Charles the Fat, 321, 385, 386, 387. Charles the Great, 9, 126, 187, 217, 234, 248, 249, 250, 253, 254, 258. Life of 307, 308. Controls papacy, 308. Reforms church, 309. Emperor, 309, 312. Results of his rule, 312, 317. Character, 317. Successors, 319, 320, 331, 334, 339, 341, 348, 354, 363, 366, 372. Decline of his empire, 384, 385, 389, 392, 393, 395, 398, 400, 405, 412, 414, 443, 446, 455, 471, 486, 487. Charles Martel, 245, 247, 258, 303, 487. Charles the Simple, 385, 390. Charu, Synod of, 358. Chirsi, Synod of, 334. Chalderic Roman 3, 304. Chivalry 490, 502, 506. Chasros Roman 2, 484. Christ, Order of, 514. Christendom, size in 604, 231, extent in 13th century, 259. Christianity, 46. Illegal 93, 102, 107. Spread of 113, 126, 128, 149, 150 in 1st and 2nd centuries, 203. Spread to Ireland, 240. Scotland, 241. Materialized, 270. Political philosophy of early, 289. Not a religio licita, 290. Compared with Roman religion, 292. Compared with Mohammedanism, 426, 481. Christians, number of 54, 92, 94, 95, 96, 97, 99, 102, 104, 105, 106. Number in 305, 113. In Rome, 148. Number, 259, 268. Increase of 291. Refuse to conform, 291. Chrysostom, 139, 167, 232, 271. Church and State, 423, 435. Church Apostolic compared, 160 ff. Church Canons, 142, 144, 145. Church Christian sources on 12 in New Test. 15. Contributions of Jews and Pagans. 53. Organization. 55, 56. Roman Empire a model. 148. Changes in. 149. Early evils. 163. Unity of. 169. Changes in. 180. Property. 190. Necessary for salvation. 194. Secularized. 201. Worldliness in. 203. Reflects its age. 260. Compared with the state, 292. Recognizes supremacy of the state. 292. Union with state not all evil. 293. Paganized. 293. Rules Europe for 1,000 years. 294. Ruled by empire after Constantine. 294. 295. Alienation of property forbidden. 296. In 7th and 8th century. 300. Receives property from Clovis. 302. Pepin. 303. And Charles the Great. 312. Divided into 22 archbishoprics. 315. Declines. 322. Constitution of. 337. And State. 338. Founded on Peter. 343. Moral arch of safety. 356. Slavery. 356. Peace. 358. ff. Private war. 358. Ordeals. 362. charity, 365 discipline, 366 worship, 370 sacraments, 373 above state, 418 corruptions, 422 in 1073, 445 property, sale of 451 feudalized, 455 wealth of 501 crusades, 502 attains its claims, 569 extent and wealth, 574 good and evil, 600 ff. In 13th century, 602 ff. Church Fathers deplore vices in church, 180, 191, 201. Command asceticism, 203, 216. Approve images, 272, 276. And the state, 290, 318, 330, 357, 365, 376. Church government, system of 60, evolution of 64, 184 regulated, 297, 446. Church history, study of 110 sources on, 1011 not theology, 7 revival of interest in, 7. Church officers, 57, 162, 260, 455. Churches endowed in Rome, 118, 265 decorated, 272 and shrines, 378, erected to Our Lady, 381, erected in Holy Land, 484. Cicero, 41, 42, 93. Cistercians, 249, 511, 570, 591. Civil law, 452. Civilization, medieval, 381, 505. Clairvox, 570. Clarinins, 538. Classical influences, 260. Claudius, 48, 113. Claudius, Bishop of Turin, 283. Clement Roman II, 410, 427, 434. Clement Roman III, 362, 467, 546, 579, 589. Clement Roman VIII, 526. Clement of Alexandria, 80, 86, 269. Clement of Rome, 57, 80, 84, 86, 153, 155, 160, 177. Clergy, houses, 64 reformed, 190 regulated, 297 influence of, 354 incomes, 355 higher, 424 22 under Gregory Roman 7. 448 in 13th century, 517, criticized, 571 cut off from laity, 587 ff. Clermont, Council of 360, 489, 492. Clovis, 234, 302, 303. Clugniacs, 199 Reformation, 424 ff. 435. Clugny, 428 ff. 434, 436, 490. Celestius, 173. Coleman, Bishop, 239. College of Cardinals, 439 ff. 580. Columba, 164, 241. Columbanus, 164, 242, 243. Columbus, 253, 505. Commodian, 80. Commodus, 103. Common People, 45. Communism, 64. Concordat of Worms, 472, 473, 545, 582. Concubinage, 451. Confession, 218, 352, 367, 426, 596. Confirmation, 352, 375. Conrad of Franconia, 390. Conrad Roman II, 407 ff. 455. Conrad Roman III, 496. Constantia, 141, 271. Constantine, 9, 54, 106, Roman Empire under 112 life of 113 ff. Vision of the Cross, 117 ff. 125, Character, 121 ff. Successors, 127 Arian Controversy, 139 ff. 159. Legalized Christianity, 160, 162. Aid to Church, 175, 219, 232, 269, 270, 271. Subjects Christianity to the State, 292, 294, 318, 331, 336, 354, 372, 374, 379. Constantine Roman II, 144. Constantine v. 277, 280. Constantinople, fall of 286, 449. Constantinople, Second Council of 145, 178, 281, 282. Constantinople, Synod of 277. Constantius, 144, 294. Constantius Chlorus, 113, 114, 115. Constitution of Lauder, 395. Constitution of Otto I, 395. Comte Le, 333. Conversion, Medieval, 231 ff. Converts Pagan, 180. Cornelius, 79. Corpus Juris Canonici, 338, 360, 588, 589. Corruptions in the Church in 10th and 11th centuries, 422, th century, 563. Council, Reform of 1074, 450. Councils, 162, 237, 266, 294, 313, 376, 421, 452, 471, 544. Credulity of Western Europe, 487. Creed Nicene, 171. Creighton, 17. Crescentius, 403. Cross, 269, 271. Cross-bearers, Order of 514. Crusades, 249, 258, 377, 404, 450. Causes, 483 ff. Time, purpose, and number, 491 ff. First, 493 ff. Second, 496 ff. Third, 497. Fourth, 498. Minor Crusades, 498 ff. Failed, 499. Results, 500 ff. Children's, 492. Against Heretics, 561. Chaldees, 241, 252. Culture, 198. Curia Roman, 562. Cyprian, 80, 82, 107, 155, 158, 159, 160, 205, 372. Cyril, 139, 168. Cyrillus, 254, 255, 256. Checks, 253, 388. 500. Damascus, 181. Damasus, 295, 330, 434. Damiani, 371, 373, 432 ff. 436, 438, 441, 442. Danes, 253, 388, 391, 392, 399, 401, 407. David, Sultan, 493. Deacons, 56, 364. Decian persecution, 203. Decius, 98, 104, 105. Decretals, 173, of Gregory I, 174. Decretum Gratiani, 589. Dedication of churches, 352. De Gama, 505. De Moulin, 333. Democracy of Papacy, 300. Denis Saint, 74, 164. Denmark Church in, 250, 251. Deposition of a Pope, 297. Deposito Martyrum, 81. Devil, 354. Dictatus Papi, 448. Didymus Blind, 139. Diet of Worms, 434, 460. Dioceses, 349. Diocletian, 98, 105, 112, 114. Dionysius Areopagite, 373. Dionysius Exiguus, 330, 334. Dionysius, Bishop of Corinth, 80, 86. Dionysius of Alexandria, 137. Dionysius of Rome, 137, 156. Discipline, 366, 376. Divorce not permitted, 356, 564. Doctrine of Addai, 81. Doctrines, 591. Doge of Venice, 430. Dogma, 295, 572. Dollinger, 17. Dominic, Saint, 518, 519 ff. Youth and Education, 521 goes to France, 522 rebukes the Cistercians, 522 founds St. Juan, 523 order approved by Innocent Roman III. 523 organization, 524 spread, 525 death, 525 570. Dominicans, 259, 432, 502, 521, 525 ff. 570, 591. Dominicus, Saint, 429. Domitian, 100, 101. Domitilla, 100. Donation of Constantine, 332, 334. Donation of Pepin, 306. Donatists, 136, 189. Donatus, 212. Dorylium, Battle of 495. Dreyer, 17. Dunstan, Saint, 427. Durin de Huss, 519. A. East and the West, breach between 438. Easter, date of 143, 155, 160, 220, 239, 240, 266. Eastern Church, 155, 184, 231, 266. Eastern Church and Western compared, 286. Eastern Empire, 502, estranged from the Western, 503, 549. Ebionites, 132, 136. Ebo, Archbishop of Rheims, 250, 335. Ecclesia and Jewish Kingdom, 56. Ecclesiastical Monarchy, 301. Edessa, fall of 496. Edict of Milan, 119, 174. Edict of 380, 128. Education, under Charles the Great, 317, 356. Echihard, 401. Elders, duties of 59. Election of clergy, 193. Election of Pope, 296, 297, 298. Elias, 210. Elizabeth, 46. Elvira, Council of 163. Elvira, Synod of 268, 276. Emerton on Study of Church History, 1. Emperor, 289, 295. German, 445, 446 Eastern, and Crusades, 491. Empire, prosperous, 40 moral condition, 46 union with papacy, 175 spiritualized, 293 revival under Otto I, 391 and papacy, 398, distracted, 549. Ian de Elettle, 558. Ephesus, Council of 168, 171, 294. Ephraim, 139. Episcopal cases taken out of secular courts, 337. Erasmus, 332. Erfurt, Council of 453. Eric, 251, 252. Aeschylus, 43. Esquimos, 252. Essenes, 44, 200, 209. Estates of the Church, 365. Ethelbert, 236, 237, 238. Eucharist, 266, 363, 370, 372, 373, 374, 558. Eudoxia, 167. Eugenius Roman II, 361. Eugenius Roman 3, 496. Eusebius of Caesarea, 15, 54, 71, 81, 102, 106, 117, 118, 139, 141, 271. Eusebius of Nicomedia, 139. Eustace of Bouillon, 494, 495, 496. Eustathius, 210. Evagrius, 15. Ewald, 165, 244, 249. Exarchs, 349. Excommunication, 155, 157, 158, 172, 367 ff. 561, 576 ff. 597. Exorcists, 63. Extreme unction, 377, 597, 598. F. Fabiola, 365. Fasting, 203, 220, 367. Felix Roman 2, 145, 185. Festival of All Saints, 378. Festival of All Souls, 378. Festival of Orthodoxy, 282. Festival of the Annunciation, 381. Festival of the Ascension of Mary, 381. Festival of the Purification of Mary, 381. Festivals multiplied, 161, 193, 375. Feudalism, 217, 389, 503, 505, 515, 574. Filioque, 266, 285. Finances of Rome, 445. Fisher, 17. Flagellants, 432, 506. Flavian, 9, 167. Flavius Clemens, 100. Florence, Council of in 1439, 285. Fontevraud, Order of 511. Formosus, 386, 387, 419. Fortunatus, 155. Fawkes de Neuilly, 519. France, beginnings of 231. Francis, Saint 9, 518, 526 ff. Early career 526 ff. Forms an order 528 ff. Confirmed by Pope 529 labors, 530 death and canonization, 530 his influence, 531 growth of the order, 532 compared with Dominic, 533 ff. Later history, 538 ff. 570. Franciscans, 259, 432, 502, 524, 526 ff. 570, 591. Frankfurt, Council of 369. Franks, 234, 235, 249, 302 ff. Fratricelli, 538. Frederick Roman II. Emperor 498, 550, 577. Frederick Barbarossa, 497. Frederick Bishop, 252. Frederick the Great, 318. Frederick of Lorraine becomes Pope, 438. Free Cities, 503, 505, 506. Freeman, 4. French Revolution, 429. Fridolin, 243. Fulda Monastery at 248. Fulk of Neuilly, 498. J. Gaius, 93. Galerius, 106, 114, 115. Gaul Saint, 243. Gallienus, 105. Gallus, 165, 243. Gamma de, 505. Gottbert, 253. Gebhard, 437 ff. Gelasius, 167, 174, 573. Genseric, 184. Gerach of Reikersburg, 518. Gerbert, 399, 402, 404, 425, 426. German Church, 247, 394. German Cloisters, 429. German Kingdom, 391. German Pope, 1st, 403 Popes, 425. Germanus, 278. Germany, origin of 321, 244 influences, 260. Jeza, Prince, 257. Geography, 505. Ghibellines, 549. Gibbon, 1673. Gieseler, 317. Gilbert, 512, 516. Gilbertines, 512. Gnostics, 132, 136, 202, 268. Gadana, 210. Godfrey of Bouillon, 494, 495, 496, 513. Godfrey of Tuscany, 442. Gontran King, 242. Goths, 145, 302. Gottschalk, 254. Grammont, order of 510. Gratian, 128, 167, 171, 368, 434, 589. Grecian religion, 42. Greek, 41. Greek Catholics, 76. Greek Church, 231, 233, 257, 449. Greek Fathers, 170. Greeks, 401. Greenland, 252. Gregory of Tours, 1673, 319. Gregory I the Great, 9, 167, 185, 191, 216, 218, 231, 236, 242, 270, 275, 276, 298, 329, 336, 344, 358, 365, 368. 370, 371, 380, 440, 441. Gregory Roman II, 245, 278, 279, 300. Gregory Roman III, 247, 280, 300, 303. Gregory V, 403, 404, 425, 426, 427. Gregory Roman VI, 410, 420, 434, 455. Gregory Roman VII, 173, 339, 369, 432 election, 446 beliefs, 447 ff. Reform efforts, 450 ff. Opposition, 453 ff. Investiture strife, 457 ff. Henry Roman IV, 462 ff. Driven from Rome, 467 dies in exile, 467. Character, 467 ff. Influence, 470. Crusader, 488, 545. Gregory Roman VIII, 546. Gregory Roman IX, 537, 538. Gregory X, 526, 539. Gregory Nazianzen, 349. Gregory of Utrecht, 248. Grosseteste, 590. Gualbert St. John, 431. Guelphs, 549. Garrick, 17. Guido of Spoleto, 386. Guilds, 576. Guiscard, 441, 449, 494. Guatkin, 17. A. Hadrian, Emperor, 102. Hadrian I, Pope, 281. Hadrian Roman II, 355, 418. Hagenbach, 17. Hakim, 485. Hakon the Good, 251. Hallimand, Archbishop, 436. Hallecker, 250. Hanseatic League, 506. Harnack, 1758. Harold Clack, King, 250. Hayes, 17. Hatch on Church History, 458. Hawk, 17. Heaven, 354, 381. Heffel, 17. Hegesippus, 15. Hegira, 480, 481. Helena, 113. Heliogabalus, 103. Hel, 354, 381. Helvidius, 220. Hank 16. Henry I, 390, 420. Henry Roman II, 241, 406 ff. 424, 426, 572, 577. Henry Roman III, 407, 408, 409, 410, 411, 420, 424, 427, 434, 437, 438, 456. Henry Roman IV, 360, 363, 437, 439, 446, 451, 459 ff. 461, 463 ff. 577. Henry V, 471, 472. Henry Roman VI, 498, 549, 550. Henry Roman VIII, 318. Henry the Fowler, 424. Henry of Lausanne, 559. Heraclius, 484. Heresy, 143, 145, 153, 154, 157, 165, 183, 184, 205, 220, 247, 295, 557 ff. 564, 572, 576. Heretics, 173, 268, 293, 368, 501, 539, 560, 561. Hergenrother, 17. Hermits, 199, 206 ff. Herod, 79. Herzog, 17. Hierarchus, 205. Hierarchy, 176, 198, 260. Hilarion, 208, 210. Hilarius, 61. Hilary, 144, 164. Hildebrand, 9, 191, 363, 424, 426, 429, 434, 435, 436, 437, 438, 441 ff. Chosen Pope, 500, 545, 548, 565. Hildebrandine Reformation, 490. Hincmar, 332, 336, 341, 361, 369. Hippolytus, 80, 177. Hispania, 331. Hirschau, 431. Holy Ghost, Order of 515. Holy Roman Empire, 344, 401, 411 ff. Holy Water, 372, 572. Honoratus, 164. Honorius, 240, 295. Honorius Roman II, 442, 513, 519. Honorius Roman III, 364, 520, 524. Hosius, 118, 141, 144. Hospitallers, 502. Hospitals, 365. Hottinger, 16. House of Commons in England, 504. Hugh Abbot of Clugny, 429. Hugh Capet, 387. Hugh of Provence, 392. Hugh of St. Victor, 373. Hugh of Vienne, 525. Hugh the Great, 392. Hugh the Long, 494, 495. Hugo, Cardinal, 446, 447. Humbert, Cardinal, 436. Hume, 16. Humiliati, 512. Hungarians, 385, 493. Huodo, Count, 401. Hurst, 17. Hymns, 371. 1. Iceland, 252. Iconoclasty, 277. Iconoclastic controversy, 267, 282 ff. 300, 304, 309. Iconolatry, 277. Ignatius of Antioch, 75, 80, 86, 159, 177, 336. Images not used by early Christians, 268, edict against, 278, 379, 501. Image worship, 161, 267 ff, 269, 273 ff, 279 ff, 302. Imperial theory of church and state, 413, 414. Incense, 220. Independence of Pope, 302. Indulgences, 377, 501, 560, 561, 572, 595, 596. Index, 573. Industry, 198. Innocent eye, 167, 170, 171, 172, 181, 452, 596. Innocent Roman 2, 362. Innocent Roman 3. 9, 191, 287, 339, 362, 364, 369, 389, 413, 436, 498, 502, 510, 515, 519, 522, 544, 545. Early life 545. Enters church 546. Chosen Pope, 547, Ideas and Reform Policy, 547 ff. Becomes head of Europe, 549 ff. Asserts supremacy over the East, 555, rules North, 556, champions Crusades, 556, 557, sought to crush heresy, 557 ff. Character and influence, 560 ff. 596. Innocent Roman 4, 525, 526, 580. Innocent v. 525. Inquisition, 364, 501, 539, 564, 565, 573. Inquisitors General, 560. Interdict, 369, 370, 577, 578. International Peace, 503. Interpreters, 63. Investiture, 436, 442. Siona, 341. Ireland, 240, 241, 250. Irenaeus, 57, 80, 86, 107, 151, 157, 177, 268, 291. Irene, 311. Isidore of Seville, 330, 333, 334, 349. Italian monasteries, 429. Italians, 394. Italy, origin of 321, reunited with East, 296, hated Greeks and Lombards, 300, independence of 550. James, 78, 79, 561. Janitors, 63. Jansen, 17. Jerome, 61, 81, 165, 181, 210, 211, 213, 219, 230, 330, 485. Jerusalem, 48 massacre, 496, capture, 497. Jesus, teachings of 49, 55, 82, 85, 101, 103, and asceticism, 200, and civil government, 289, 364, and slavery, 356, and baptism, 374. Jewish Church, 46, 204. Jewish Synagogue, 59, Passover, 266. Jews, 189, 260, 276, 277, 358, 501. Joannes, 208. Johannes Turacrenta, 332. John, 7886. John, King of England, 369, 549, 552, 555. John I, 296. John Roman II, 179, 296. John Roman 8, 418. John X, 419. John Zi, 429. John Roman 12, 394, 395, 396, 397, 398, 419, 424. John Roman 13, 398, 401, 425. John Roman 14, 402. John Roman 15, 379, 403. John Roman 16, 404. John Roman 19, 407, 408, 420. John of Damascus, 274, 279, 280. John of Gors, 399. John the Greek, 402. John of Syracuse, 189. John, Saint, 237. John, Saint, Order of 512. Joseph, 46. Javinian, 219, 220. Judaism, 476, 479. Judas Iscariot, 79. Judgment of God, 361, 364. Julian, Emperor, 127, 145, 271. Julian I, 166, 171, 181. Julius Paulus, 93. Julius Pope, 144. Jus Ecclesiasticum, 589. Justin Roman II, 185. Justinian, 179, 187, 294, 296, 397. Justin Martyr, 291. Jutes, 235. Juvenal, 46. Catercamp, 17. Keble, 17. Kentigern, Saint, 241. Killian, 165. Knights of Emancipation, 515. Koth, Prophecy about Church History, 8. Koryish Priests, 479, 480. Quran, 502. Kurtz, 17. Kylian, 243. 50. Lactantius, 81, 118, 220. Laity cut off from clergy, 193, 198 in 12th century, 353, 448, 451, 571, 572. Lambert, 386. Lanfranc of Canterbury, 442. Langton, Stephen, 553, 554. Las Casas, 525. Lateran Councils, 360, 408, 439, 557, 562, 563, 564. Latin, 41, used in worship, 371. Latin Christianity, 46, 400. Latin Church, 16, 255. Latin Empire of Constantinople, 498, 502. Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem, 502. Laurentius of Amalfi, 434. Law Imperial controls the Church, 295. Law Study of, 503 under Innocent Roman III, 567. Lawrence, 296. Laws of Charles the Great, 315 ff. Lay Investiture, 449. Origin, 457. Opposition, 458. Henry Roman IV. And 459 ff. Compromise in 1111, 471. Concordat of Worms, 472, 545. Laying on of Hands, 375. Lazarus, Order of 515. Lechfeld, Battle of 393. Lectors, 62. Legatine Power, 501. Lent, 266, 370. Leo the Armenian, 282. Leo, King of Armenia, 555. Leo I, 168, 174, 182, 344, 374, 452. Leo Roman III. The Isaurian, 277, 278. Leo Roman III. Pope, 310, 444, 41. Leo Roman IV. 340, 364. Leo Roman VIII. 397, 398, 424. Leo Roman IX. 424, 436, 438. Leontius, Bishop of Neapolis, 273. Lex Visigothorum, 330. Libanus, 219. Liber Pontificalis, 330. Liberatus, 349. Liberius, 145. Licinius, 116, 118, 124. Lingard, 17. Literature bourgeois, 575-71. Liturgy, 254, 352. Lollards, 283. Lombard, Peter, 373, 378, 525, 592. Lombards, 233, 303 ff. 308, 549. Lombardy, crown of 392, 409. Longobards, 145. Louvre, 17. Lord's Prayer, 356, 371. Lord's Supper, see Eucharist. Lauder, 319 ff. Lauder Roman II, 336. Louis the Child, 387, 389, 420. Louis the German, 254. Louis the Pious, 216, 217, 250, 253, 255, 319 ff. 335, 363, 378. Louis Roman II, 320, 340, 341. Louis Roman IV, 393. Louis Roman VII, 496, 504. Louis Roman IX, 498, 526. Louis X, 504. Lucifer, 144. Lucius, king, 73. Lucius I, 452. Ludolf, 393, 394. Luitgard, saint, 566. Luitprand, king of Lombards, 302, 399. Lull, 248. Luther, 3, 219, 434, 451, 536, 546. Leon, 73. Leon, Council of 285. 1000. Macarius, 141, 208, 213. Maecenas, 94. Magdeburg Centuries, 332. Magellan, 505. Magna Charta, 554, 555. Magyars, 256, 391, 393, 399. Maggiolo, Abbot of Clugny, 429. Mamno of Cologne, 438. Manichaeans, 105, 132, 133, 189. Marcella, 211. Marcellus, 139, 141. Marcia, 103. Marcian, 155, 156. Marco Polo, 505. Marcus Aurelius, 102. Marozia, 419. Marriage, 181, 204, 255, 266, 356, 378, 407, 420, 424, 430, 432, 436, 453, 564. Marsiglio of Padua, 332. Martel Chaz, 302. Martin, saint, 164. Martin of Tours, 212. Martin I, 299. Martyrs, 193, 270, 378, 380. Mary, Virgin, 46, 193, 356, 381. Mass, 189, 193, 217, 218, 352, 370, 572, 593, 594. Massacre of Jerusalem, 496. Matthew, 80. Matthias Flacius, 16. Morris, 299. Morris, 512. Maxentius, 115, 117, 123, 269. Maximian, 114, 115. Maximus of Salona, 368. Maximus the Thracian, 104. Maximus of Turin, 170. Magifert 17. Medieval Papacy 5, 183, 201, 234, 293, 389. Meersen, Treaty of 321. Meister Eckhart 525. Melania 210, 211. Melchiades 331. Mercurius, Saint 427. Merovingian Kings 348. Methodius 205, 254, 255, 256. Metropolitans 61, 337, 348, 349, 581, 582. Michael Roman 3, 254, 284. Middle Ages 16, 198. Mike Zislav Duke 256. Milan Council of 144. Milv Council of 171. Milman 17. Milvian Bridge 116, 117, 118, 123. Minims 539. Miracles 220, 501. Missionary Monks 198. Missionary Zeal of Rome 152, 153, 164, 198, 229 ff. 233, 251, 254, 259, 303. Mistio 254. Moeller 17. Mohammed 318, 450, 476 ff. Mohammedanism 258, 277, 278, 293, 476 ff. 482 ff. Monarchians 134, 253. Monastery, Firstwald 209. Monastic abuses 407, 427, 516. Monastic orders, decline of 515. Monastic rule 242. Monasticism, Christian 45, 185, 190, 198, 199 ff. 204 ff. 209, 211, 212, 217, 218, 220 ff. 239, 243, 249, 254, 421, 424, 486, 502, 510, 516. Monk the Ideal Man 198, 199, 217, 352. Monks 421, 517. Monotheism 46. Montanism 135, 136, 177, 202. Montesta, Order of 514. Moors 514. Morality 198, 353, 354, 563. Moravians 254. Mosheim 16. Moimir 254. Muller 17. Muratorian Canon 81. Music and Worship 193, 270, 371, 372. Mysticism 570. N. Napoleon 4, 307, 318, 386, 399, 406, 408, 412, 470, 514. Napoleon Roman 3, 307. National Churches 322. National States, Rise of 320. Neo-Caesarea, Council of 163. Neoplatonism 199. Nepotism 563. Nero 84, 99, 100. Nerva 101. Nestorian Controversy 272. Newman 17. New Testament 15. Nicaea 495. Nicaea, Council of 120, 131 ff. 142 ff. 153, 155, 162, 171, 175, 178, 232, 281, 282, 293, 331, 380. Nicene Creed 142, 143, 144, 145, 171, 234, 266, 314. Nicholas I, 255, 256, 283, 322, 332, 333, 334, 336, 340 ff. 344, 389, 413, 418. Nicholas Roman II, 360, 439, 441, 442. Nicholas of Cusa, 332. Niedner 17. Nilus 272, 427, 429. Nippold 17. Nithard 253. Norbert Saint 511. Norman Conquest 241, 362, 408. Normans 408, 449. Norsemen 251, 385 ff. Norway 251. Norway King of 449. Novatianists 135, 156. Nuns 352, 421. Nurses Order of 515. Obotrites 388. Observants 539. Odilo Abbot of Clugny 429, 433. Odo Abbot of Clugny 428. Odo of Udes 386, 387. Odosir 296. Olaf 251, 252. Olaf the Saint 252. Oldredis John 512. Old Testament 48. Olga Grand Duchess 257. Oligarchy in Church of 4th century 169. Optatus Bishop of Milve 9, 73, 169. Ordeals 361 ff. Ordination 377. Origen 80, 82, 86, 137, 177, 205. Orosius 170. Orphanages 365. Or 17. Orthodoxy of the West 143, 153, 165, 181. Ostrogoths 232, 296. Oswy King 239. Otger 335. Otto Duke of Saxony 390. Otto I the Great 126, 253, 255, 257, 258, 318, 390 ff. 420, 421, 425, 443, 487. Otto Roman II, 253, 394, 401 ff. 425. Otto Roman III, 402 ff. 420, 423, 424, 425, 426, 427, 430. Otto Roman IV, 550. Otto of Brunswick, 550. Pachomius, 209. Pachomius, rule of 212. Pagan and Christian Rome, 55. Paganism, 113, 120, 127, 128, 149, 180, 190, 247, 252, 501. Paliman 209. Palestine Creed 142. Pallium 576. Palmers 485. Pamuchus Saint 365. Pantheon 378, 380. Papa or Pope 173. Papacy Rise of 148, 159, 160, 164 ff. 169, 175, 176, 177, 182, 193, 259, 284, 295, 296, 297, 299, 300, 301, 306, 309, 320 ff. 336, 339, 340, 370, 404, 406, 412 414, 419, 423, 440, 441, 549, 561, 566, 569. Papacy, decline of 389, 394, 410, 419, 420, 434, 559. Papacy and Empire, 391. Papal Constitution, 337, 445. Papal Court, 580, 590. Papal Hierarchy, 143, 176, 299, 344, 575. Papal Penitentiary, 589, 590. Papal Theory of Relation of Church and State, 316, 413, 569. Papias 80-86. Paris, Council of 334. Parish, 365, 387. Paschal Roman II, 429, 471, 472, 545. Paschal Roman III, 315. Paschasius Radbertus, 372. Pastor 17. Pastorox, 506. Patriarch of Constantinople, 296. Patriarch 61 of the West, 143, 156, 349. Patriarchs of the East, 156. Patrician of Rome, 308, 410. Patrick Saint, 240, 241. Patrimony of Saint Peter, Origen, 307, 394. Paul, 46, 54, 72, 73, 74, 77, 79, 84, 86, 87, 100, 148, 151, 170, 248, 356, 364, 440. Paul of Nola, 211. Paul of Thebes, 203, 205. Paul Roman II, 581. Paula, 210, 211. Paulina, 365. Peace International, 503. Peace of God, 358. Peace Universal, 46. Pelagius, 171, 173, 297, 298, 299. Pelagius Roman II, 187, 298. Penalties, 367. Penance, 352, 370, 375, 376, 595, 596. Penitential books, 376. Pepin, 248, 300, 303, 304, 306, 363, 372. Perry 17. Persecution, 99 ff. 108, 116, 119, 152, 157, 203, 560. Perseus 46. Peter 57, 72, 74, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 87, 100, 153, 159, 166, 170, 237, 239, 246, 259, 284, 290, 336. 343, 440, 448, 451, 561. Peter of Alexandria, 81. Peter Comester, 332. Peter of Corbel, 545. Peter the Great, 318. Peter the Hermit, 490, 493. Peter and Paul, 151. Peter Waldo, 559. Peter's Primacy, 78, 79, 151, 170. Peter C., 159. Petrine Theory, 76, 77, 82, 85, 87, 107, 169, 170, 175, 177, 188, 337. Pharisees 44. Philip 61. Philip I, 494. Philip Roman 4, 514. Philip Roman 6, 504. Philip the Arabian, 104. Philip Augustus, 369, 497, 549, 551, 577. Philip of Hohenstaufen, 550. Philosophy of Early Christians, 202. Photius, 257, 283, 343. Piacenza, Council of 489. Pictures, 270. Pix, 241. Pierre de Brise, 558. Pilgrimages, 161, 193, 270, 367, 484, 485, 486, 501. Pindar, 43. Plato, 43, 48. Pliny, governor of Bithynia, 290. Pluralism, 563, 565. Plutarch, 47. Poitiers, Synod of 358. Poland, 449. Poles, 253, 388. Polycarp, 155, 177. Polytheism, 46. Pontifex Maximus, 149, 152, 160, 289, 292. Poor Catholics, 519. Poor Clares, 530. Poor Houses, 365. Poor Man, 519. Poor Men of Leon, 519, 560. Pope favors kingship of Pepin, 304. Popes, 61, 154, 159, 173, 180, 233, 234, 259, 295, 296, 297, 299, 300, 310, 312, 314, 316, 322, 336, 347. 348, 349, 355, 358, 394, 423, 443, 488, 571, 575, 576. Popes German, 445. Pornocracy, 419. Prayers for the Dead, 220. Preaching, 371, 591. Precentor, 63. Premontre, Order of 511. Presbyter, 57, 60. Priesthood, Elevation of 161 constitutes the Church, 339. Priests, 218 freed from secular courts, 338 duties, 352, 353, 421. In conflict with monks, 517, 586. Primates, 348, 581, 582. Prince Edward, 498. Propetrine View, 77. Property of Pope, 306. Property renounced, 204. Protestant historians, 1776. Protestant Revolt, 131. Protestant Revolution, 131, 321. Provinces, 349. Prussians, 249. Pseudo-Isidorian Decretals, 284, 326 ff. 389, 418, 436, 448, 544, 567, 589. Purgatory, 266, 352, 381, 560, 596. Puritans, Arabic, 479. Pusey, 17. Pythagoreans, 199. R. Radbert, 593. Radbod, 243, 244, 245. Radislaw, 254. Rambold Archp, 360. Rathurius, 399. Rasad, 333, 335, 336, 341, 342. Raymond, Count of Toulouse, 489, 494, 495, 516, 561, 562. Raymond of Pi, 512. Recollects, 539. Reformation, 3, 199, 203, 242, 296, 306, 355, 404, 406, 410, 423 ff. 429, 436, 437, 448, 450, 451, 490, 502, 510, 518, 526, 544, 565, 571. Relics 161, 191, 193, 220, 245, 270, 306, 354, 378, 379, 380, 488, 563, 572. Religion, definition of 6. Religiosi, 217. Remini, canons of 294. Renaissance, 505, 526. Remold, Saint, 429, 430. Resemblances and differences of Eastern and Western churches, 286. Richard I, 497, 549. Riculfus, 335. Rimbert, 251. Ritual, 161, 254, 255, 449, 591. Robanus Morris, 372. Robert Darbrisel, 491, 511. Robert of Apulia, 459. Robert of Flanders, 494, 495. Robert of Molisme, 511. Robert of Normandy, 494, 495. Robertson, 17. Rochise, 216. Roman bishop becomes pope, 193. Roman Catholic belief, 76. Roman Church, 77, 107, 150, 152, 153, 160, 164, 176, 231, 233, 239, 257, 266, 295, 296, 300, 301, 344, 347. 365, 560, 574. Roman Constitution, 289. Roman Emperor, 161. Roman Empire, 40, 95, 98, 112, 148, 161, 295, 312, 401. Roman Hierarchy, 149 ff. Roman Language, 149, 190. Roman Religion, 42. Roman See, 160. Romans, 398. Rome, 40, 48, 55, 148, 150, 159. Rome, Council of 295. Romuald, Saint, 431, 432. Roth, 17. Rouen, Saint, 523. Rudolph of Swabia, 466 ff. Rufinus, 211. Russia, 449. Russians, 253, 257, 388. Rutilius, 219. S. Sabbath, 255. Sabellians, 136, 137. Sabinian, 299. Sacerdotal class, 63. Sacramentaries, 372. Sacraments, 352, 370, 371, 372 ff. 592 ff. Sadducees, 44. Saints, 193, 270, 354, 501. Saint Worship, 378, 379. Saladin, 497. Sallust, 46. Salvation, 366. Samaritans, 45. Saracens, 308, 385, 388, 401, 419, 484. Sardica, Council of 144, 165, 166, 171, 178, 181. Savonarola, 525. Saxons, 234, 249, 258, 308, 309, 318, 450. Schaff 17. Schenkel 17. Schism 143, 156, 165. Schmidt 16. Scholasticism 526. Schools 247. Schools of Rome 48. Schrock 16. Scotland 241. Sebaldus, Saint 250. Sex Rise of 132, 157. Seculars 218. See of Rome 301. Selagenstadt, Council of 590. Seljukian Turks 485. Semi-Arians 141, 142. Semish 17. Semler 16. Senators 59. Seneca 47. Separation of clergy and laity 63. Separation of East and West 143. Separation of Roman and Greek churches 265, 285. Septimus Severus 103. Serfdom 504, 505. Sergius Roman II 340. Servatin 512. Severinus 244. Severus 255. Shed 17. Sheldon 17. Shrines 378. Simeon 46, 429. Simeon Stylites 210. Simon de Montfort 562. Simon Magnus 81. Simony 189, 407, 411, 421, 424, 426, 427, 430, 432, 436, 437, 439, 448, 450, 455 ff. 545, 564. Siricius 173, 181, 220. Sirmium Council of 144. Sixtus v. 441. Slaves 119, 190, 290, 356. Slave trade 190. Slavic Church 254, 255. Slavs 253, 258, 308, 385, 388, 392, 399. Socrates 15, 117. Soldiers of Jesus Christ 525. Sophocles 43. Soter 80. Sources of History 1215. Sovereign Power of Pope 306. Spain 449. Spanheim 16. Spanish Church 181. Spiritales 338, 538. Stanley 17. State and Church 545. States 290, 423. States of the Church 307. Stephanus King 257. Stephen 61, 156, 160. Stephen Roman II 305, 307. Stephen Roman IV 440. Stephen Roman VI 364, 386, 419. Stephen Roman IX 438. Stephen of Chartres 494. Stephen of Lysiac 510. Stephen of Tigernot 510. Stephen of Tournai 332. Stahlberg 17. Strauss 17. Stubbs 17. Sturm Abbot 248. Suetonius 95. Suvi 232. Suidbert 249. Sulpicius Severus 16. Sunday 120, 237. Superstitions of Europe 487, 501. Suze O. Henry 525. Sutri Council of 410. Swabians 243. Sweden 253. Swen King 251, 449. Swidbert 165. Silverius 296. Sylvester Roman II 257, 364, 404, 406, 410, 425, 426, 488. Symmachus 296. Synods 162, 352. Syriac Church 81. T. Tacitus 46, 73, 95, 99, 101. Tanchelm 558. Tancred 494. Taller John 525. Templars 502. Temporal power of the papacy 301, 302. Temporal power subject to papal 559. Tertullian 57, 71, 73, 80, 84, 86, 106, 107, 137, 152, 159, 205, 268, 381. Teutonic Knights 502, 514. Teutonic Order 250. Teutonic Roman Church 233, 234. Theodatus 297. Theodora 282, 419. Theodore 139. Theodore of Canterbury 377. Theodoret 168. Theodoric 296. Theodorus 239. Theodosian Code 296. Theodosius I 128, 179. Theodosius Roman II 294. Cephano 399, 401, 402. Theophilus 331. Theosophists 45. Therapeutae 200, 209. Third Estate in France 504. 13th century 569. Thaubrand 252. Thomas à Becket 545. Tiberius 71. Tithes 574. Tithing unjust 436. Titus 100. Toledo Synod of 358. Toleration Edict of in 311, 118. Tonsure 64, 237, 266. Tours 333. Tours Battle of 258, 482. Tours Council of 437. Tozer 17. Trajan 98, 101. Transubstantiation 370, 564, 593. Travel 42. Treaties 563. Treves Synod of 591. Tribur Council of 463. Trinitarians 139, 141. Trinity 246. Trinity Order of the 514. Troyes Council of 471. Truce of God 359 ff. 369, 409, 429, 490, 503. Trudbert 243. Turks 286. Tyre Council of 294. U. Ulfilas 232. Ulpian 104. Ulrich 379. Union of Celtic and Roman Churches 239. Union of Church and State 293. Union of Rome and Greece 265, 266. Unity of Belief 157. Unity of the Church 564. Universal Church 185. Uni 251. Urban Roman II 360, 429, 470, 489, 490, 514, 545. Urban Roman VIII 581. Ursinus 295. 5. Valens 128, 219. Valentinian I 128, 171, 179. Valentinian Roman II 128. Valentinian Roman III 167, 184, 294. Valerian 105. Valambrosians 431. Vandals 145, 232. Vaughan 17. Venice Patriarch of 449. Verdun Massacre of 249. Verdun Treaty of 320, 321. Vespasian 100. Victor 155, 157, 160, 331. Victor Roman III 422, 470. Vienna 73. Vigilantius, 220. Vigilis, 297, 299. Vincent Ferrier, 525. Vinland, 252. Virgin Mary, 193. Visigothic Code, 296. Visigoths, 232, 233. Visitors in the Church, 296. Vitalian, 371. Viterbo, 560. Vladimir, 257. Vulgate, 181, 237, 330, 331, 372. W. Waddington, 17. Waldenses, 560, 572. Walter of Cologne, 493. Walter the Penniless, 493. Wens, 253, 254, 388. Wernfrid, 244. West Franks, 399. Western Church, 160, 171, 231, 266, 295, 297, 298. Whitby, Council of, 239. Whitsunday, 375. Wycliffe, 332, 451. Widows, Order of, 204. Widukind, 399. Wilfrid, 239. Wilfrid, 165. Willibrord, 165, 243, 245, 250. William of Bavaria, 431. William of Burgundy, 449. William the Conqueror, 450, 494. William of Normandy, 442. Willibald, 248. Worms, Synod of, 363. Worship, 352. Wolfram, 244. Y. Ungren, 250. Z. Zechariah, 46. Zacharias, 304, 305. Zealots, 45. Zeller, 17. Zephyrinus, 160, 331. Zeus, 43. Zosimus, 167. Transcriber's notes. On page 21, under Three Creeds, Liturgies, and Hymns, entry number 9 is missing in the original. The outlines of sources for chapters Romans 6 and Roman 21 are not in logical order. The outlines are displayed as printed. The following corrections have been made to the text. Page Roman 12, Roman 7, Nicholas I. Page 15, Roman 3, Works of art copied from originals, period missing in original. Page 19, Comparative View of the Doctrines and Confessions of Christendom, Edinburgh, 1887. Page 20, Merbt C. Quellenzer Geskich des Papstums. Page 21, Collectio Confessionum in Ecclesiae Reformatis Publicatarum, Leipzig, 1840. Page 23, Rerum Italicarum Scriptors, Mill, 1723-51. Page 24, 14, Mean J.P. Patrologiae Cursus Completus. Page 24, Bibliothèque de Théologie Historique, Paris, 1906 ff. Page 26, Seal Zog I section 17, Schaff, comma missing in original I 29. Page 26, Wrote a history of the Langobards original, has Langobards. Page 26, Hamo D 853, Bishop of Halberstadt original has Halberstadt. Page 28, Bishop of Meaux, wrote a discourse on universal history. Page 31, 10, Bohr D 1860, Professor in Tübingen. Page 31, Best ed. by Barry Lond. Page 32, 2 Shed D 1894, Professor. Page 43, Yet were omnipotent and omniscient original has omniscient. Page 49, Virgil 1719 BC, Works. Page 65, see chapter Roman 3, of this work, period missing in original. Page 66, Cyprian D 258, Works, Ib Roman 8, period missing in original, Roman 13, 1-64. Page 66, Antinic, Christ, Lib Roman 17, original has a comma ed, Roman 7. Page 67, Apostolical Canons, tr by R. C. Jenkins. Page 67, in his works Roman 7, Roman 9. Page 68, Farrar, F.W. The Early Days of Christianity. N. Y. 1882. Page 70. Schaff, I. 187–17506. Page 80. Named Peter and Paul as Neronian original Hasnerian martyrs. Page 82. Eckel Hist. V.C. 6. Page 88. Roman 12. 326, 379, 451, 452. A.M. ed. Roman 2. Page 109. Aurelius, Meditations original has extraneous period. Xi 3. Page 110. Butler C.H. 6-8. Page 110. Fawkes C.H. 1-3. Page 111. Robertson B.K. ICH-357. Page 113. The daughter of an innkeeper. Page 130. Croke C.H. 1216. Page 138. That the Son is Logos in soul. Page 146. Philostorgius, Epitome of Ecclesiastical History. Page 146. I Special. Page 147. The Arian Controversy, NY 1889. CH, original has CH. 1-2. Page 165. Willebrord around Utrecht. Page 194. Beston Antonyk. Christ. Lib. Volume 17, period missing in original. Page 196. Platina B. Lives of the Popes. Page 227. Day, SP. Monastic Institutions. Lond. Comma missing in original, 1865. Page 227. Fosbroke, T.D. British Monachism. 3D original has extraneous period ed. Page 262. Haddon, A.W. and Stubbs, W. Page 263. Pelzel and Dabrowski, Rerum Bohemic, original his Bohemis. Page 263. Pothest, Regesta. Page 275. Tertullian, 192, quoting the second. Page 275. Minucius Felix, 220, argued. Page 276, but still justified the use of images. FN anchor was numbered 7 in the original. Page 279. Full of the most ludicrous historical blunders. Page 320. By the Treaty of Verdun in 843, original has a period. Page 323. Mansi, Sacrorum Conciliarum original has conciliarum. Page 324. Mann, H.K., The Lives of the Popes in the Early Middle Ages. Page 324. Pressense, Ida, History of Church and State. Page 333. Carried to Rome by Rathod Inn. Page 340. A sumptuous feast was then served. Page 345. Frabe, 1884. Page 357. But called Christian slaves brothers. Page 362. Clement Roman 3, Celestine Roman 3, and Innocent Roman 3. Page 363. Hildebrand and Henry Roman 4. At Canos original has Canosa. Page 364. Alexander Roman 3, Celestine Roman 3, Honorius Roman 3. Page 373. Areopagite believed in 6. Page 382. Pertz, et al., Monumenta Germaniae original has Germany, Historica. Page 382. P. Flug Hartung, JV Acta Pontificum Romanorum Inedita. Page 390. Curtailment of their prerogatives, original has a comma. Page 408, but 10 years later he was forced. Page 412. Or of innumerable local contests. Page 413. Ideal theory, united the Church and the State. Page 415. Ostwald Urkunden zur Erlitterung der Verfassungsgeschichte Deutschlands im Mittelalter. Page 415. Die Geschichtschreiber original has Geschichtschreiber der deutschen Vorzeit. Page 415. Die Kaiserurkunden des X, sei und Roman 12, Jahrhunderts chronologisch Verzeichnit. Page 416. Giesebrecht W.V. Geschichte der deutschen Kaiserzeit. Page 416. 5. Langen Geschichte der Römischen Kirche, period missing in original. Page 417. Darras Roman 2, 358, 580. Page 417. Gilmartin I. 31. Page 417. Hallam Ch. 1 pt. 1 ch. 3 pt. 1. Page 435, whose bishops and priests were given to luxury. Page 450, account for his simoniacal practices. Page 456, king to destroy, quotation mark missing in original this heresy, so detestable. Page 464, had even persuaded the Countess Matilda. Page 467, Henry Roman IV, laid siege to Rome. Page 478, which rejected polytheism and preached asceticism. Page 483, Salerno besieged, 873. Page 495, they laid siege to Nicaea. Page 509, Chantrel per 4 ch. 1. Page 526, occupied a chair in the University Original his University of Paris. Page 529, and to preach the word of God, period missing in original. Page 531, even attempted to win the Sultan himself, original has a comma. Page 540, there were 2 entries numbered 16. The second 16 has been changed to 17, and the 17 has been changed to 18. Page 541, Adderley J. Francis, the little poor man of Assisi. Page 542, Ulzog Roman II, 507-522. Page 542, Fisher P.D., 6 ch. 6. Page 550, when Emperor Otto Roman IV ceded all the lands. Page 553, reinstatement of the Bishop of Limoges original his Limoges. Page 554, paying therefore the annual sum of 1,000 marks. Page 556, in fulfillment of their bargain with the Venetians. Page 559, taught asceticism, denounced the vice. Page 562, war with Simon de Montfort as leader. Page 566, left behind him so many results pregnant original has pregant with good. Page 568, Gregorovius BK, Roman 9, ch-3. Page 609, Bogoris Duke, 256. Page 610, Chalderic Roman 3, 304. Page 610, Church Christian Sources on 12. Page 610, Pepin 303. Page 611, Clarinins 538. Page 611, Columba 164, 241. Page 616, Jewish Synagogue 59. Page 620, Poorhouses 365. Page 620, Propetrine View 77. Page 620, Raimbald Archp 360. Page 621, Semish 17. Page 623, Willibrord 165, 243, 245. Marival ICH 1 Roman 4 ch. 39. Davidson Aristotle BK, 1 original has extraneous period ch. 4. University Life in Ancient Athens ch. 1 original has extraneous period, Newman Hist. Sketches ch. 4 original has extraneous period. Hatch, the Greek influence on Christianity. Shearer Hist, of Jewish people Milman Hist, of the Jews. Josephus Antic, Roman 18, I. John Roman 4, 4 Roman 8, 48. Footnote number added by transcriber. Origen against Celsus. Transl and Rep Roman 4, 6. Transl and Ref Roman 4, 6, 8. Eutropius, Breviarium X. Presence her, NCHR Doctrine. See History of Doctrine italics added for consistency. By Fisher, Shed, Sheldon, Hagenbach, Bohr, Loofs, and Harnack. Moeller, I. 336, suggests Eustathius original has Eustachius of Antioch. Cf. Heffel, I. 355 ff. Nicene and post-Nicene Fathersend is not in italics in original. 2d Sir, Roman 12. Evagrius ch. Hist, I. 21. Neander, Light in Dark Places, 417, period missing in original. Haddon and Stubbs, I. 2226. Haddon and Stubbs Roman 3, 5. Haddon and Stubbs Roman 3, 40. Haddon and Stubbs Roman 2, 103. Heimskringla, Chronicle of the Norse Kings. Joseph Antic, Roman 15, 8. Decor mill, see Roman 3, original reads decor mill c, Roman 3. Pede Roman 3, 11 section. Contra Judi, et gentle, period missing in original, section 9, see Neander Roman 2. Ib lxxx, 39. Neander Roman 3, 213. C. Smith and Cheetham. Mean CXXVI, 1099. Translations and reprints, original has comma question mark. Louis the Youngest had Aquitaine original has Aquitaine, Gascony. Defensor passes Roman 2, c. 28. Balms, Brace. Lee Stud in ch. Hist. Moeller Roman 2, 113. Wattenbach Deutschelgeschichtsk, I 134. Thatcher and McNeil No, 55 Neil number 55. Steindorf Job, D. Deutsch, Reichsunter Heinrich Roman 3. Giesebrecht Roman 2, 643. Pertz v. 297. Alleris, original has Alleris and the comma is missing, Oeuvres de Gerbert. Jeisk, die Hirschwar Waren des Investiturstraits. Neukirch, des Leben des Peter Damiani. Ibid, Benizzo, 806. Pothest bib hist, Roman 2. Wattenbach Jeskich Squellen, original has a period, Roman 2. 308, 520. Mean, volume 217. Mysteriorum Evangelici Leges, et Sacramenti Eucharistiae. Gesta in, Roman 3, sec 2. Ep Roman 7, 164. Ep volume Roman 2, 335. Murat Roman 7, 893. Agnel, Curiosités Judiciaires du Moyen Age. Wasserschleben, Bussardnung original his Bussardnung, Halle, 1851. In the index, where semicolons were used instead of commas between page numbers, the semicolons have been replaced with commas. End of the Project Gutenberg ebook of The Rise of the Medieval Church by Alexander Clarence Flick.